Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a look at our very first story. Inflation has gone up from 29.8% in June to 31.7% in July. It is the highest recorded since late 2003. However, the rate of inflation has slowed down in the month under review as it went up by only 1.9 percentage points. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, the increase in inflation was once again caused by transport with 44.6%, housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels constituting 43%, and furnishing. Professor Samuel Kobina Enim heads the Ghana Statistical Service.
Highlights for July 2022 rate of inflation. July 2022 rate of inflation stood at 31.7%, indicating an increase from 29.8%, which was recorded for the month of June 2022. We decompose this from two perspectives, from a food and non-food inflation perspective, and from a domestic and imported inflation perspective. From a food and non-food perspective, we record food inflation 32.3% and 31.3% for non-food inflation. From a domestic and imported perspective, we record domestic inflation 29.2% and imported inflation 31.3%. From a regional perspective, we identified Eastern region recording the highest rate of inflation of 38.1%, and the Upper East region recording the least inflation of 19.8% for the month of July 2022. Highlights from a monthly perspective: for the month of July 2022, month-on-month inflation stood at 3.1%, indicating a 0.1 percentage point increase between June and July 2022, as we did record 3.0 for the month of June 2022 relative to 3.1 for the month of July 2022. Decomposing this from a food and non-food inflation perspective, food inflation month-on-month 3.3%, non-food inflation 3.0%, indicating a 0.3 percentage point difference.
Let's cross over now to the northeast region, where the Nairi of Mamprugu is asking its subjects to end all forms of disputes and disagreements and strive to maintain the interrupted peace in the traditional area. Nabohagu Abdullahi Mahama Sharika II, on the occasion of this year's Fire Festival, also prayed to his ancestors to deliver his people from poverty and protect the land from calamity. Here's a report by Ilyasu Tanko.
The Bugum Tobo, as it is called in Mampurle, falls on the 9th day of the traditional month of Bugum Gole and also celebrated by the Gombes and the rest of the descendants of the ancient Bewa lineage in remembrance of an old legend. In Nalirgu, the festival commenced a few hours after supper, after the big drum was played to assemble the people to the king's palace. Hundreds of celebrants, each holding a bundle of thatch, gathered at the palace to partake in the celebration of the exciting chaotic annual event. Amid drumming, dancing, and gunshots, the celebrants and spectators waited outside the palace for the king to emerge to launch the festival. Soon, Nabohaga Abdullahi Mahami Shariga emerged through a procession made of his sub-chiefs, drummers, and other royal court members. As soon as the king came out, an announcement was given to the almost uncontrollable crowd. The speaker has just delivered a warning from the overlord to those who might be planning to indulge in activities which will mar the beauty of the festivity. Then, through a charged atmosphere, the king set off the festival by throwing the first flaming touch after twirling it around his head 3 times. His elders tapped from his fire, and the rest of the crowd then tapped from each other until the last person's touch was lit. The celebrants then marched through the principal street, singing and chanting war songs, accompanied by loud sound of the big drum, with sporadic blasts of gunpowder from the local warriors and hunters. The king does not take part in the route march and moves back to sit on stage, surrounded by his elders to await the return of the crowd. Whilst waiting, the king was treated to a spectacular Lungsi performance. The The Longsi sang his praises and that of his forebears as the king listened with rapt attention. Upon the return of the crowd, the king's New Year message was disseminated by a senior royal court elder. The king is calling on all of us to continue to live together in peace and pacify one another with compromises. This year, the king is once again thankful to his ancestors for the peaceful and progressive year and called on the people to forgive one another and rally against poverty. He calls for an end to all forms of disagreement, saying poverty is a generational problem. The king also encouraged parents to send their children to school while advising the youth against alcohol peddling.
Well, the skin or clothes have traditionally been used by many students to aid in cheating during examinations. In addition to these, most invigilators are aware of the use of calculators, phones, and watches to cheat. A study by the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology has found one which eludes the invigilators, and that is the use of UV light. On Tech Thursday, Love FM's Kwesi Deborah speaks with the lead scientist, Dr. Bollard Fokwo.
The rise in academic cheating indicates that students are finding innovative techniques to cheat during examinations. This situation has left many invigilators and academic stakeholders wondering how students manage to cheat in exams. The study, published in the journal Educational Research International, sought to explore the techniques used by students during examinations. Dr. John Bollard Fokwo of the Department of Sociology and Social Work is the lead researcher.
At all levels of our educational system, I think examinations are crucial. And most of the certificates that we give out, the integrity of those certificates depend on the quality of the examinations that we conduct. So examinations are central to the university education that we do. We've been interested in how students approach examinations and the strategies that some of the students use to get around some of the examination regulations, and that is one of the motivations that led to this particular study. Okay, so we spoke to a number of university students, and when we were doing the study, we spoke to those who were in final year, and they told us that before the exam, they try and devise different strategies that they use to take advantage of or cheat, if we may use that word. And one of the interesting things that they told us was that they use technology, new technology. So for instance, there are some newly designed pens that they can use to scan the question paper. So while they are writing, the question is scanning the papers, and they can then, when they ask to go to the washroom, send the questions out to someone at home to give them the responses before they come back and write. Others too use sophisticated watches that can scan the question paper so that at all points in time, even when the examiner says, "Don't take my question out," they still have access to the questions when they go. Okay, so the students are coming up with interesting techniques, including the use of UV lights. So sometimes they have a pen that can write, so the naked eye cannot see the writing, but you write on his index number or his style. When it comes to the exam hall, we say start work, they will use a UV pen, which will then reveal the writing on their skin or somewhere. Then they will use that to do what? To inform their answers. So they are using different technologies to enhance the way they cheat. But then the universities too, we are trying to catch up with how students are using technologies so that we can also ensure the integrity of the examinations that we conduct. Well, the way forward is for us as researchers to always inform our policymakers so that they can make policies to improve the way we conduct examinations. So for instance, I know that KNUST, we've started preventing students from coming to the exam hall with smartwatches, because we know that when they come, they can use it to access other devices. And then there's been a system in place where students are not allowed to bring programmable calculators to the exam hall. these are all measures that we are trying to do to prevent the use of technology as a strategy for cheating during examinations.
Reporting for JoyNews, Kwesi Deborah.
Well, as part of efforts to improve the livelihoods of local farmers and food security across the country, farmers in the Kintampo North municipality of the Bono East region have been introduced to climate-smart agricultural methods. The AICCRA project is using demonstration plots to showcase and introduce farmers to crop and seed varieties that are climate resilient. Plant pathologist with the Crop Research Institute, Dr. Joseph Adomako, says the project will make Ghana's food systems more resilient in the face of climate change. And Asabit has more.
The Ghana cluster of the Accelerating Impacts of the CGIAR Climate Research for Africa, as part of its efforts to make Ghana's agriculture and food systems more resilient in the face of climate change, is together with the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture working with local, regional and international partners to improve farmers' access to climate information services and technology and innovations that underpins climate-smart agriculture. Dr. Joseph Adomako is a plant pathologist with Crop Research Institute.
What actually we are doing here, when we came for the need assessment, we realized that most of the varieties, that the maize varieties they grow, were not tolerant to diseases, to pests, and also to the stress of drought. So when they came, they gave us that challenge and they presented that as their major challenge. So through the ICRA project, we introduced 6 new varieties which have been developed by the CSR Crop Research Institute and its sister institute, the Savannah Agricultural Research Institute in Tamale. So these varieties that we introduce are stress tolerant, which that means they are tolerant to droughts, to insects, pests, and to onto diseases.
The project is using its demonstration plots to showcase and introduce farmers to climate-smart agriculture innovations such as improved crop or seed varieties in some selected communities in the Bono East region.
This is what we brought to them, and as we can all see from the fields compared to what they do and what we did, we can see the clear difference. That one, we are using less stakes for the stakes. 2, we have minimized land wastage. That's on the same piece of land as the DS. We are having more population of the yam. 2, we can also realize that our foliage is more or less disease-free, still very green with less amount of disease compared to what the farmer practice, because they do not treat the soil or anything.
Kintampo North Municipal Director of Agriculture, Simon Yambore, on his part, noted that the new farming methods will help improve the farmers' income base as well as help with food security in the country.
If you look at the farmers' fields, it's still looking green now, whilst these improved varieties, they are all dry and you can harvest now. But these farmers' varieties, they still need rain. So the varieties are very important. When they adopt it, it's going to help the farmer to increase their yield, improve their income base, and then there will be total improved food security in the country.
Some of the beneficiary farmers shared with JoyNews what they learned in the process and are optimistic that the climate-smart farming method will help improve their yield and income.
I've learned something about how to increase your yam mounds. And then we also learned something about, we were raising yam mounds, but I wasn't know that we use the lines to plant a yam. But as at the agricultural factory, I've seen that we can also use lines to plant a yam.
You say, ya mwachira ya say yambolan no ya boya no ya de afonka karka wobolan ba kwa abashirin ya de no nyina mfaso na ya nya afro wo afu adwumade na mudebra no.
The ICRA project has in all 31 demonstration plots in 22 communities across 6 regions in the country, including 6 farming communities here in the Bono East region. Anna Sabit, JoyNews, Admano in the Kintampo North municipality.
The Catholic Church is seeking to build an entrepreneurial congregation to curb unemployment among Catholics. The initiative will also create wealth, especially among young Catholics. This was disclosed at the 2nd Ho Diocesan Youth Congress in the Volta region. Correspondent Fred Kwame Asari now reports.
The second whole Diocesan Youth Congress was on the theme Catholic Youth and Entrepreneurship, a backbone for employment and self-reliance. The Congress provided participants with the required skills and mindset for the entrepreneurial world. Addressing the Congress, the whole Diocesan Youth President, Fred Ajakpa, who lamented the security threat posed by unemployment in the country, outlined some initiatives being undertaken to build an entrepreneurial congregation.
The Catholic youth are currently undergoing various forms of skills training in the parishes to equip our people with relevant skills for the job market. This, in our estimation, is a small but important step in addressing the issues of youth unemployment. We request, most humbly, that these youths undergoing the skills training sessions are empowered to start their entrepreneurial endeavors immediately after completing the programs. Anything short of that will roll back the progress being made by our initiative.
The Bishop of the whole diocese, Most Reverend Emmanuel Kofi Fianu, implored the youth to set up businesses aimed at resolving societal challenges.
I believe that the greatest point of starting someone's own business is the ability to identify the challenges confronting contemporary society and how whatever we do in terms of business can respond to these challenges. As Catholics, we value the right and duty to participate in society, working together for the common good and well-being of all, especially the poor and the vulnerable.
The guest speaker, the Chief Executive Officer of the Eco Capital Investment Management Limited, Dela Herman Agbo, lectured the participants on guidelines for becoming an entrepreneur. He suggested the establishment of an incubation center to help nurture businesses.
We'll set up business incubation center here. We'll set a fund also here called Whole Diocese Forever Ever Venture Fund. And Eco Capital will put a seed money. Eco Capital will manage this fund and will set a committee. We will be reviewing business plan and be helping people from the Catholic youth, because we want the Catholic youth to lead. We will guide them. We'll put systems in place to guide them to run companies that will become international standard companies.
Fred Kwame Asari, JoyNews. Oh.
She was the only survivor of an accident that claimed 14 lives on the Elmina-Komenda Junction Road. A week after the accident, Judith Barnes, a mother of two and a teacher in a private school in Takrady, says her two children, a WASI candidate and a 9-year-old child, cannot come to terms with what has befallen them. Medical officials at the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital say she might have to spend nearly 5 months at the hospital. Richard Kwejunyako reports.
So we are here at the female surgical ward at the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital. This is where Judith Barnes, the only survivor in the accident that happened between Elmina and the Komenda Junction stretch of the road, claimed 14 lives. She is the only survivor here. She's been telling me a lot, saying that there were 15 in that particular bus. All she saw was a smoke, and then the last time she opened her eyes, here she was surrounded by so many people she couldn't see anything.
We are now going to Takrady. I saw they were burning some bush. We were passing through the smoke. It was a heavy smoke, so we were passing through it. I was sitting right behind the driver. So passing through the smoke, I couldn't see anything again. All I saw was I was in the hospital, so people surrounded me. When I was conscious, then I heard we were 15, 14 dead. I was the only survivor. It has not been easy. being in an accident is different from being a normal person. It has not been easy, my brother.
How many kids do you have?
I have two. I have two, and I'm a private teacher. My firstborn was here, and he was crying a lot. He was crying a lot. As for the second one, he's just a child. He's 9 years.
9 years.
He knows, but she knows, but she doesn't understand.
Judith's mother, Mercy Abua, is distraught.
In fact, I was not on myself at that moment. I couldn't stand it. But I thank God who has brought me this way. And I thank Ghanaians. I thank everyone who supported me in prayer. I know God will continue doing it for me. Thank you.
Her teary eyes tell how devastated the impact of the accident has been on her family.
The senior one is a boy, and he is now coming to write his final year exams at SS3. Yes, and it has affected him a lot because when he called me, all what he would say is, "Grandma, I can't even learn. I'm thinking of mommy, so I can't even learn. When I take the book, I don't know where to start from." And all what I would say to him is that, "Junior, pray."
Here at the hospitals, prayers are being offered for Judith. The prayers were followed by the popping of champagne. President of the Accident Victims Support Foundation, Reverend Cyril Benedict Crabb, led a team made up of the National Insurance Commission and the National Road Safety Commission to support Judith.
Whenever the accident happens, accident victim support comes to the aid of the accident victims want. We also coordinate with the hospital to make sure that such a person who didn't call to be in such a position, who didn't sign on to such a position, but for the recklessness of some driver or some mishap, that person should be given that treatment that will not make him or her to die. Then again, we also support them a little bit with financial, with finances, that they will have it on them, because any accident victim that get into the accident, that get into crash, first thing that they go through is the loss of their money. And so we come to give them something on them. And then lastly, we use the situation to at least advocate for safety on our roads.
For now, Judith will have to spend nearly 5 months in the hospital. One accident, 14 lives snuffed out. The only survivor living through terrible pains. The driver of the articulated truck, who is alleged to have caused the accident, is facing criminal charges in court, while the person who set the fire by the roadside that made smoke engulf the entire area is still on the run. KA municipal authorities say they are on a hunt for that person. Reporting for Joy News, Richard Kwejenyaakon, Cape Coast.
Well, that's how we sew up the news for this morning. But stay with us. We have a surprise for you as we get into the news review. We'll be right back. Well, as promised, here we are with the news review. It's a beautiful Thursday morning, and I'm joined by a surprise guest. You've not seen her on this belt in a while. I am pleased to give all of you Nana Oye. I'll just leave it there. Nana, a very good morning to you. I think you'd have to unmute, please.
Yeah, you can hear me.
I can hear you now.
Great. Good morning. How are you? And good morning to all your listeners. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Great to have you. I'll start her from this end because we've not heard from you so much lately. I'll start from what Nana Oye has been up to in the last, year, the last few months. What can you share with us? What have you been up to?
Up and about in Accra and beyond. Yes.
Doing what exactly? I know I'm pushing you.
No, not pushing. Doing some legal work, running a law firm, and then also the JEA Mills Memorial Heritage, and also some work at the NDC party level. So that's Nanohe, up and about.
Okay, let me just ask this final question. The MPP has had its National Delegates Conference. You are yet to go through that entire enterprise. You've already started with some activity there. But when you look at Ghana currently, and they always say the opposition is a government in waiting. When you look at Ghana currently, what picture does it paint for you?
A dismal picture, quite worrying, quite concerned, frustration, dismay, hopelessness, and not too good in terms of stability of our country. People complaining about the high cost of living, and not too good, but not too good. Difficult financial times, especially people having a problem putting 3 square meals on their table. So not too good.
Is this then, which leads to my next question right before we get into the daily graphic, is this then a situation your party, the NDC, would like to inherit? Because some have said, let me just paint the picture for you. Inflation has hit an all-time high almost in 2 decades. Since 2003, December, we've not seen inflation rise to this level, 31.7% as of July. The cedi is still the worst performing currency in Africa. The last I checked, it was about 9.2, 9.4 cedis to the dollar. And, you know, business people are complaining. You look at how much we have to pump of our, currency, or how much we have in terms of compensations. Then you consider the fact that we've been having these downgrades. First, S&P downgrading us from B- to CCC+ with a negative outlook. And now Fitch also downgrading us to what some people call junk status, a CCC. Just yesterday, I was reading about Professor Steve Hank of the Johns Hopkins University, who is also saying that we really need to do something. In fact, he says we should sidestep the central bank and have a currency board to stabilize the cedi. Is this, or with all of this happening, is this an economy you would want to inherit? Can you do anything about it if you come to power?
It is obvious that the new patriotic party have failed Ghanaians. The economic proposals that they made and the economic strategies that they promised Ghanaians would help fix Ghana economy has definitely failed. On the other hand, the NDC has consistently, at every point in time we have come into government, proposed economic recovery and economic programs that have succeeded. The evidence is very clear. We look at the tenure of President John Evans Atta Mills and what the rates of inflation, the fact that Ghana was the fastest growing economy in the world. The data and the figures are there to show that the NDC is committed to growth, development growth, economic growth, prosperity for the ordinary Ghanaian. The evidence is very, very clear.
You say the evidence is clear, but guess what? You also took us to the IMF.
But we went to the IMF and we were able to bring the economy back on track. That is the difference.
You did not complete the program. You did not complete the IMF program. It is this administration that ended the IMF program.
But we were brave enough to go, we were brave enough to implement, and we saw the results. The MPP, on the other hand, swore heaven and earth that they would not go to the IMF. They swore heaven and earth that they had the solutions, and this is where we are. And I am also calling for Ken Ofori-Atta to resign. He has failed as a finance minister.
You say he has failed, but this is a system. He's not the only person there. He may be the arrowhead, but take, for example, the decision to go to the IMF. That was not his decision. He clearly didn't want that. He felt we were still not on the cusp of disaster, and we shouldn't go the way of the IMF. But when his boss, the CEO of the country, President Akufo-Addo, says, let's go, based on the advice I have, he has no choice. Why blame him?
Let's take a very simple example. And I'll use my favorite bakery in Ajigano, in Adenta. In January, I was buying a loaf of bread at 7 Ghana cedis. Then it went to 15 Ghana cedis. It went to 17, and now I'm having to pay 20 Ghana cedis for a loaf of bread. Simple. And so it's obvious that Ken Ofori-Atta has not managed this economy properly. He is the arrowhead. He is the lead. And we need somebody else to take the lead. In fact, if I had my own way, they should all be cleared. The MPP has obviously failed. If you said we had the money, what have you done with the money? And why are Ghanaians struggling to even eat or even buy water to drink? Why are Ghanaians struggling? This is the question. It's very simple. Just analyze the cost of a loaf of bread. Just analyze the cost of a ball of kenke and find out whether even people have jobs to be able to get money at the end of the month to pay and buy food to put on their table. Simple.
Right.
And that will help you determine whether or not MPP economic policies have failed and whether or not Ken Ofori-Atta should still be the finance minister. Simple.
As we get into the daily graphic, I mean, what you're saying also brings to mind the talk about bread and amani and how, inflation has affected them. Bread, how much we were buying it and how much we're buying it now. But mind you, remember that the president has said he is not going to reshuffle. That is the NDC trying to do propaganda to affect his party, and that he's not going to pander to the whims and caprices of the NDC. But let's get into the Daily Graphic newspaper. 2 funds to aid justice delivery. President, government contribute 2.2 million Ghana cedis. I see you wanted to respond there. Maybe let me do the stories in the Daily Graphic, and then you can put your response together with these. Access to legal services by the ordinary citizen has received a boost with the launch of 2 funds to enhance the justice delivery system. The Legal Aid Fund, which will strengthen the financial capacity of the Legal Aid Commission to discharge its duties effectively, and the Law Reform Fund, which will help the Law Reform Commission undertake development projects and regular law reforms, which will each have 1 million Ghana cedis of seed money. Now, while the Legal Aid Fund was set up under the Legal Aid Commission Act 997, the Law Reform Fund comes under the Law Reform Commission Act 2011. The objective of the Legal Aid Fund is to ensure the financial capacity of the LAC to efficiently and effectively carry out its mandate, while the objective of the Law Reform Fund is to help the LRC undertake projects for the development and reform of laws, develop human resources in law reform, among others. Let's take a quick look at other stories, and then you can put all of them together. I know definitely you'll be talking about these funds, the Legal Aid Fund and all of that, especially in the space you operate. There's also attempt to discredit me will fail. Colonel Damwa to OSP. Now, this has to do with, let me just get to that story on page 16. It has to do with customs and its leadership mired in some tango with the OSP. So the Commissioner of the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Colonel Kwejo Damwa, retired, has accused the Office of the Special Prosecutor of an attempt to discredit him. He explained that the OSP was trying to indict the Deputy Commissioner Operations and myself, quoting him, that's what he said, and myself, and me, and I should say. And anyone who has read that report very well will know the basis of that report is hollow. Luckily for me, God is always on my side, he added. I have lived a meaningful life, and if he attempts to destroy me, it won't be easy for him. People have tried it, I have survived, and this one too, I will survive. He said this to rapturous applause by the senior customs officers. But how do you react to this entire situation and Madam Hene of the LaBianca group, and how she's a member of the Council of State, and how supposedly she has used her position to influence what the special prosecutor says, the taxes she should be paying to the state. But this has been the response we've heard from different groupings. Like I said, we've heard from the woman herself, we've heard from the customs officers involved, we've heard from, I believe, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, and we've also heard from the freight traders. It appears there is some disagreement in terms of whether or not she is wrong. What is your thinking?
The facts are very clear. The special prosecutor has given his ruling or judgment or whatever, and if they have a problem with it, they should appeal. And I would even ask for a more comprehensive investigation beyond the period of time that the special prosecutor investigated. I'm sure there's more to it than meets the eye. Now to Colonel Damois, it's really sad and regrettable that a public officer holding the high office of Commissioner of Customs of the Ghana Revenue Authority would give such comments, would actually give such comments and make such comments about such a serious indictment. Very, very talking about the special prosecutor being a small boy and about God and about he's led a meaningful life. What has that got to do with the finding of fact that there was an issue with the valuation and that the lady should have paid more? He should address that finding, and not throw in red herrings about the special prosecutor being a small boy and all that. He should address that, and he should be investigated and also prosecuted. Because if this has happened...
But he says, he says he's done no wrong. He says this is standard practice, that it's been done by those before him, and it's nothing new. He says he's done no wrong, and that, in fact, he mentions just to add this to the conversation, so we are all aware, being fair to both sides. He adds that one Akurugu, an officer, the SP, the special prosecutor, wanted that person to be seconded to him, the office of the special prosecutor, which he refused on numerous occasions. Then eventually that officer, moved out of customs, joined the police force, so to speak, became a COP, and now he has been seconded to the office of the special prosecutor. But he feels there is some bad blood, and it's on the back of that bad blood that, Kessie Jabeng is hounding him. He feels this is not being fair. What do you make of that? Are you just going to neglect that?
His argument is very, very untenable. He has provided no evidence to the public and to Ghanaians to show that Kessie Jabeng is hounding him. He has provided no evidence. If he refused to second an officer, and the officer has now been seconded, what has that got to do? We have all read the report, and the findings are there. So he should address and attack those findings. And for me, my worry is that as Commissioner for the Customs Division, his statements are very regrettable and very worrying. To personalize and actually go to the extent of saying the special prosecutor is a small boy. The guy has written a report. And so if you have a problem and you think that the findings are not the findings are not true, then attack the findings and don't be personal. When people make such personal attacks, then there's a lot beneath. So I am even asking for the Office of the Special Prosecutor to investigate the commissioner himself and to find out whether or not there are other such valuations. We want to collect our revenue, and the Customs Division is a very integral public institution that rakes in revenue for the Republic of Ghana and for the government of Ghana. And so he should be investigated, because all these arguments he's making against the report are very untenable, are personal. He should stick to the facts and address the facts and the adverse findings against him. Ghanaians will not accept these arguments that he's making because they are not tenable.
Right.
He is there to collect revenue for Ghana. That is not what he's doing. He ought to be investigated.
Right. A quick one on the 2 funds to aid justice delivery. I know you'd be very excited about that. Is this something you'd be willing to commend government for?
Yes, it's a step in the right direction that there are funds, but access to justice for the poor and the vulnerable in Ghana goes beyond this. There are so many issues. Legal lawyers, even the ratio of lawyers in rural areas is a problem. Administration of justice is an issue. In terms of even the courts in districts, by now we should have every district should have a court. We've expanded, there should be courts in other human settlements. So even in terms of infrastructure, in terms of administration of justice, we need to see some reforms. It's good that the Law Reform Commission is also being given some funds, because we need to have new laws to cover new areas. For instance, the ICT, technology, abuse on social media, and several other laws.
Right.
But beyond that, we even need legal representation. I know FIDA has paralegals. We need to expand that. And there's a lot that has to be done. Even for filing fees, poor people cannot even afford to pay filing fees in court. There was one lady who had a case custody. She had to pay 600 Ghana cedis. She couldn't pay. Somebody had sued another gentleman. He had to pay 150 Ghana cedis. He could not pay. So he couldn't get justice. So even beyond this fund, there's a need for government and for the stakeholders, especially the Ghana Bar Association. I will call them, the president of the Ghana Bar Association, you ought to do more to help in justice delivery, especially justice delivery and access to justice for the poor and the vulnerable. This is a good step in the right direction, but let's do more.
Sure thing. Let's take a quick look at two more stories in the Daily Graphic and we'll wrap it up very briefly. Page 16 says, we must live within our means. You may have followed that graphic business Stanbic Bank breakfast meeting yesterday, where the speakers were talking about living within our means. Quoting one of them, the fact that we have been going to the IMF for this number of times tells us that we have not been practicing fiscal discipline and not living within our means. If we get a program, this would be our 18th. And I feel this trickles down as well to each of us in this country and how we can tighten our belts and live within our means. That's the first one I'd have you react to. The second one, just to add it quickly, parties agreed at IPAC to use Ghana card. That's according to the GCPP's citizen, Ato Dazi. He is General Secretary of the Great Consolidated Popular Party. And he has agreed with the Electoral Commission on the use of the Ghana card for the continuous registration. This, he said, was because it was the best form of identification for a Ghanaian by law and the correct-based document for one to get their names on the electoral roll. So those two quick areas. It's interesting because I had a recent interaction with your General Secretary, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, and he said that, in fact, at IPAC, which your party is not participating in for now, that agreement was not there from what information he has. But Citizen Atodazi of the GCPP disagrees. What is your take first on the Ghana card being used as a standard, being used to vote, first of all, and secondly, for continuous registration, those who are going to be added to the voters' roll?
The Electoral Commission themselves know that that is a recipe for chaos in Ghana. The Electoral Commission knows the laws and the fact that under the 1992 Constitution, we all have a right to vote once we are 18 years. And if they come up with a Ghana card, it will deny us that right to vote. And that is unconstitutional. It is very clear. So it's non-negotiable. Whatever means of verification they would wish to apply to ascertain whether I'm eligible to vote or not, or whether I'm eligible to contest or not, should be in conformity with the Constitution. And I should not be denied my right to vote simply because the Electoral Commission has selected to use a certain means of verification that denies me my right to vote. So that would be my comment on that, that I have a right to vote, and the Electoral Commission must think through a means of verification for allowing me or for getting me to exercise that right to vote. And the Ghana card is not an appropriate means of verification.
How about living within our means? Any very quick response to that?
I mean, I'm really surprised at the speaker who made that comment. Is that the problem?
No, the person was not referring to the personal one. The person was referring to our fiscal challenges. So failing to live within our means as a state in terms of expenditure, borrowing, and all of that. I extended it to the fact that it must trickle down.
But the issue is not, I would disagree that the issue is failing to live within our means. The issue is the corruption. The issue is the procurement malpractices. The issue is the using of political patronage. Those are the issues, key corruption. And the issue is wanting to buy a jet when you don't have money. So those are the issues. The president or whoever wanting to procure aircrafts, wanting to build a cathedral when there's no money. So those are the issues, and we must face the elephant in the room. And as speakers and as leaders, we ought to say it as is. Ghanaians are struggling and trying to live within their means. Government must live within their means and address malpractices, address corruption, address political patronage, and address procurement, fraud, and all that. When all that is done, then we'll be able to get the resources to provide for our socio-economic development as a country. So the speakers who are they are renowned and they know their subject matter must face the elephant in the room and speak truth to power. They are not speaking truth to power. They must tell President Nana Akufo-Addo that he is doing the wrong thing and he should address corruption, he should address the fiscal discipline and also procurement malpractices, and he should crack the whip and not say he's not going to reshuffle.
All right, let's look at some quick stories from the Ghanaian Times and the Daily Guide newspaper. But focusing on the Ghanaian Times, 1,251 vehicle owners land in trouble as DVLA sanctions them for various defects. There's also current economic challenges, blame inconsistencies, lack of proper implementation of government policies for the challenges. That is Dr. Ayim Dake. I will have you respond to these, but I also want to sneak in this bit very quickly. You've heard undoubtedly of what has happened to a level 100 students at the KNUST, especially as you've been at the Ministry for Gender, Children and Social Protection before. You've heard of that situation at the KNUST, 6 people gang raping this poor student. Is there a rape culture of sorts creeping into our universities, and the levels of violence that we're seeing? I mean, where is it coming from? What do you see? How do we stem the tide of same?
Yeah, I mean, my son called me very late and was telling me about the Twitter storm yesterday and, and the discussions that were going on Twitter, and asked me to join. So I was able to read. And it's been there. It's been with us. It's getting worse due to social media, an increase in porn, access to porn by even minors.
Is there a cultural element to it? Is there a cultural element to it?
Yes, there's a cultural element to it. There's an economic element to it in terms of poverty, and there's a social element to it in terms of exposure to social media and the lack of certain restrictions. So all this is coming up, and there also a lack of adequate structures to address rape, to prevent rape, and even to address rape when it occurs. And this is something we have been advocating for. We now have the Domestic Violence Act, and there may be a need to extend it to tertiary institutions and to ensure. University of Ghana has a sexual harassment policy, but we need to go beyond that because there is a creeping culture of impunity that is occurring because we are not even able to get prosecution. When you even look at the conviction rates, they are very low, below 3% conviction rate. So the law is not even acting to deter people from committing rape. Most of the time, sometimes it's even settled out of court,
right,
and what have you. And I'm hoping this fund would, or some resources will be used to go into even acquiring equipment, modern equipment to be able to detect. At this point in time, why do I need to take my underwear to court for it to be examined to ascertain whether or not I've been raped? There's equipment. You can do the DNA, you can take samples, you can do a swab, you can take samples, and it will be ascertained whether I've been raped by Kofi or Kwame. Up till now, as I speak, we don't even have basic equipment. Because if I say Kofi has raped me, they can take a swab from me, and they can also take his DNA and his blood sample or urine or whatever, and they can ascertain whether he raped me or not. But as we speak now, the police service do not even have that equipment. So we need to really do a lot to reduce and prevent rape. It's really sad, and my heart goes out to the lady, and I'm hoping that the perpetrators will be
I mean, we cannot even begin to put ourselves in her shoes. We cannot even begin to imagine what trauma this would cause her, and hopefully no one else has to go through a situation like this. But let me just sneak in, now that we're talking about the gender ministry, let me just sneak in this bit. You have been there before, and some celebrated you for the great work you did. Others didn't feel you did so well. But when you look at your ministry then, and what you did, and now, and what we are seeing, I mean, there's a Sarah Adwoa-Safo situation, for example. She's been away for about a year. Now she's lost her position. The Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, Cecilia Abnadapa, has had to step in. Now we've, substantively put forward two other people, the deputy being moved. I mean, then and now, what is the comparison? Is that ministry still strong? And maybe your quick reflection on Sarah Adwoa-Safo. I'll just wrap before you give the answer to that. The Daily Guide, Fitch confirms $3 billion IMF lifeline for Ghana. So instead of the 1.5 billion we were looking for, we are now looking for twice of that, 3 billion. And that is what they've confirmed officially online. So you can now go back to the gender ministry situation, and then it's a wrap.
Yes. You see, the gender ministry is a people's ministry. It takes care of persons with disability. It takes care of vulnerable persons. It takes care of children. It takes care of the aged, and also is in charge of social services for the whole of Ghana. As far as I'm concerned, it's the most important ministry within government because it directly takes care of the people of Ghana. And so it is very sad. It is a very sad state of affairs that there's no substantive minister, that we have a caretaker minister over a number of years. And this is a party.
Not over a number of years, just about a year.
Well,
just about a year.
This is a party that said they had the men and the women, and they talked about unqualified or NDC not having the men and the women. You have the men and the women, and you can't get one single person, to lead a ministry, such an important ministry.
Quick question. Would you fault quick question. Would you fault Sarah Adwoa-Safo, and do you feel she should have been sacked a long time ago?
Sarah Adwoa-Safo was appointed by President Nana Akufo-Addo. She was given a mandate. She's a member of parliament. Between the president and parliament, the laws and the rules and regulations are there. Ghanaians have asked for representation in her constituency. Ghanaians have asked for service from her as a minister. So I would fault President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He is the appointing authority, and he has the mandate to implement programs for that ministry. Honorable Adwoa-Safo is performing a duty. And so it is the buck stops at Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and nobody else. I will not fault Honorable Adwoa-Safo. I will fault the president. He appointed her, and he promised Ghanaians he was going to implement certain programs. So if there's a problem, the buck stops with Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Everybody should blame him, the president, and not Adwoa-Safo. And to go to the ministry, LEAP disbursements have fallen back. Several programs are not working. It is not good enough. We all know when we don't have a leader and an arrowhead, we all know the problems. And all we are asking is that Ministry of Gender is such a critical ministry. It shouldn't be taken through what it is being taken through. And I commend all the workers there, the chief director and all the officers who, despite the challenges, have been working. Let's work, let's serve persons with disability, let's serve the aged, and let's also serve our leave beneficiaries.
It's been exciting connecting with you. It's been so long, and thank you so much for making the time to interact with us this morning. Nana Oye.
Have a good day.
All right, you have a good day too. Wish you the very best. Hopefully you enjoyed the news review. That was a bit of a surprise we pulled on you this morning. But up next, we serve you sports. There's a whole lot coming up, and you can expect all of that to be delivered shortly. Do stay. Well, I'm sure once you saw the government statistician, you knew we were going to be talking about inflation. What are the real figures and how is it biting the ordinary Ghanaian? We'll be giving you a breakdown shortly, but inflation, just so you know, has gone up from 29.8% in June to 31.7% in July. That is about a 1.9 percentage point increment. It is the highest we've seen since 2003, almost the highest we've seen in 2 decades. But what are the drivers? What are the dynamics? What is the spread month on month? And why exactly are we even ending up here? We'll be having our guest who will join us shortly for a conversation on how we've ended up here and what the way forward is. But let's quickly take a look at what I have behind me. It has to do with July inflation compared to a year ago and compared to the previous month. So let's take a look. A year ago, we're looking at an inflationary rate of 9%. 9%. In June 2022, just a month ago, or 2 months ago, because this comes in the preceding month, we were looking at an inflationary rate of 29.8%. In July, the ante has been upped again, though not moving as speedily as before. But now we're looking at 31.7%. And when you do the math, you would notice that there's been an additional some 1.9% of an increment that has been added on. So 29.8% to 31.7%. But let's look at some further dynamics in that regard. So what are the drivers of this inflation? That is something important to look at. We can talk bread and butter issues, and we start with bread. In fact, bread is the chief component driving the latest inflationary figure at 56.1%. It means basically that your bread, which maybe you were buying for 5 cedis, now could cost you as much as twice what you were getting it for. There's also herrings, smoked herrings, amani, so to speak, which is now, experiencing an inflationary rate of 51.3%. You would also know that, as we're walking you through these figures, it's a basket of over 200 items that are used to compose the inflationary rate, which is why you're seeing this breakdown. So 56.1% for bread, 51.3% for amani, smoked herrings, and in terms of rent payment, and if you're renting like most people are, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. It has seen an inflation of 46.4%. Now that is stark, almost 50%. Next to that, bus and trotro fares. Now later, when I give you the breakdown when it comes to the cost of diesel, fuel generally, and others, you would see why this month on month has been one of the chief drivers. In previous months, it has been the chief driver of inflation in the country. It now stands at 42.3%. And then tied to what we're telling you about herrings, fish generally seeing an inflationary rate jump of 32.5%. So that could also, affect your kako or more money that you get on the market. But let's move on to the next slide. And this is the breakdown I was talking about that would give further meaning to what we're talking about. So when you look at the usual drivers in terms of year-on-year inflation, you would see that for July, grapes, and this is important because at a point in time, they were not even available. And recently, I had to buy some for someone who wanted grapes. That was what the person felt for. And guess what? I was purchasing it at a rather exorbitant price, 35 cedis, 40 cedis. And I was asking myself, what is going on? That, by the way, were seedless grapes. Those were seedless grapes. So grapes, that is imported food, having or experiencing a year-on-year inflation of 114.6%, 114.6%. Now that is stark. It means you could be paying, 4 times as much what you were getting it for, or at least twice as much. Then you look at diesel, and no one needs to talk too much about diesel because we've already known over the last few months how it has appreciated in price from something around 5 cedis thereabouts to 12 to 13 cedis, depending on where you are purchasing it from. And of course, it's crucial. It's factoring into the inflationary rate because you know that if you're going to use a generator, diesel, likely, if not premix fuel, then you would also, if you're a farmer, agricultural equipment, that is what they use. And then the bus drivers, a lot of them are on diesel. So 113.5%, petrol generally 83.2%. Let's look at some other basics. Washing soap, 74.6%. So if your usual washing soap has seen an uptick in price, know that it is because of all of these. Then there is what? Coconut oil, 73.9%. Groundnut oil, 70%. You can also look at wheat flour. It is important on the back of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. You look at it, 67.2%. And the bakers are complaining. That factors into the first slide where bread prices have actually gone up. Let's talk about the last two components. Sunflower oil, 63%, watermelon, 62.5%. And let's take a quick look down at this, breakdown, and then we shall get to our guests. So when you look at the regional inflationary rates, you would see that, interestingly, it's not the Greater Accra region that is experiencing the highest inflation. It's actually the Western region, 44.8% there. Then you look at the Central region, 41.8%, and now the Greater Accra region with 33.3%. But it's still not even close to the highs. There are other regions there, 39.7%. Things pretty good in the Ashanti region, 23.3%, though still high. Then Upper West, 33.8%. Brong Ahafo, or the Bono area, 29.7%. We know the divisions now. Northern region, 24.3%. Upper East showing the lowest with 15.7%. And those are the dynamics. But let's get to our first guest who joins us for a conversation now. Dr. Priscilla Chumesi Bafo. She's an economist at the University of Ghana. We'll also have joining the conversation President of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obeng, together with Mark Bedu Abwaje, Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, who joins me in the studio. But let me start with Dr. Priscilla Chumesi. My first question to you, inflation still going up. For you, is there any surprise at the inflationary rates that we're currently seeing, the highest since December 2003?
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished viewers. I must say that I am not surprised at the trend we find in the rate of inflation. Throughout last year towards till today, you find that certainly there's been a lot of issues on the global front, and also issues regarding our domestic production and all that is feeding, particularly when you look at cost of fuel, for example. You look at, for instance, the depreciation of the currency. All these have a pass-through effect on the overall price level that we see. So I am not surprised if you ask me.
You're not surprised, but since there's been a bit of a slowdown, we've only seen a 1.9 percentage increment this time round, unlike in previous months where we've seen pretty large percentage increments. Did you expect that? Did you expect a bit of a slowdown?
So the indication of the slowdown is possibly telling us that maybe some of the policy initiatives that are being rolled out to try to tackle the rate of growth in prices is taking some effect. To a large extent. And I was quite excited when you went into details, the component and the drivers of inflation. So when you look at it and you see that as a nation, if we are trying to tackle the issue of inflation by, for example, tackling it from the food angle, it could make a significant impact if we yield some results within a given period. On the issue of, for instance, we know that inflation can also be imported to a large extent. And when you look at your emphasis on the cost of grapes, for example, because of the depreciation of the cedi, you see that importers would need more cedis to import a given unit. And when you go elsewhere, prices are also rising. So they buy it at a higher price, come back and then sell it at a higher price. So there are a whole lot of dynamics that are at play. But for me, the emphasis should be on us working on the structure of the economy, getting some stability in the exchange rates, and also getting to work on trying to get domestic substitute to most of the things that are imported. And when that happens, to a large extent, we could have a hang on the rate at which the prices are rising.
You speak of local substitutes, but for some of these, like the grapes you mentioned, we don't have any substitutes. We don't cultivate them here. What are some of those items that you feel we should start weaning ourselves of? Just yesterday, at the graphic business Stanbic, engagement, breakfast meetings that they've been having, they were talking about living within our means, especially as a government on the fiscal level. But what are some of the things that you feel we can wean ourselves off and produce here to cut down on the hard currency that we have to put out there, which also clamps down on our own currency and impacts our economy?
Great. So when you look at it, yes, the grape is not produced locally. But for example, why should we be in a tropical zone with lots of options for fruits and for the average Ghanaian to develop the taste for grape, for example? So some goods are for a certain class of people, and certainly their inflation rate would be higher given that the goods are imported. So for as a country, I think that we should get back to the very simple things that we can do. We have lots of fruits, mangoes, pineapples, oranges, lots of things that we can package, we can add value to, create jobs, and also take the burden off the currency. So for example, if you ask me, I do not understand why we still to date are importing fruit juices from all over the globe. We are importing, tomato paste. So basic, simple.
Hello, Doc.
Can ease the burden of the constant demand for dollar to bring these things in. When we talk about, for example, rice importation, I know there are issues along the supply chain that is not able to give us the competitive edge to be able to produce rice at that level. But I think that we should get to work on some of these things. And consistently, the argument has always been that, yes, periodic cyclical changes, pressure on the currency and all that. It is all because the structure of the economy is significantly import dependent. And when you look at the supply of foreign currency, what are the options? Where do we earn foreign currency from? It's basically by exporting raw materials. So we send raw materials abroad. We don't get much in terms of foreign currency. And we are importing manufactured goods, very simple manufactures. We are not talking about sophisticated things like gadgets and all that. We are talking about simple manufactures that, for example, if we are serious about industrialization drive, these things should be at this point produced in Ghana and to some extent also exported for us to have some, what do we call it, leeway and reduce the persistent pressure that is always on the currency. That also feeds into the inflationary rates.
It's interesting that you've put all of these together. Let me just let my other guests know, Mark Bedu-Abuaje, CEO of the National Chamber of Commerce, and Dr. Joseph Obeng as well, that because of time, because Dr. Priscilla Chumesi has to attend to other matters, I'm going to focus on her briefly, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so. I just have to exhaust the issues with her, and then I'll come to you, gentlemen. We're also joined by Samson Asaki Awingobit, Executive Secretary, Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. Mr. Awingobit, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished listeners.
All right, thank you very much for joining us. Just stay and let me exhaust a few issues with Dr. Priscilla Chumesi, and then we shall take it from there. Doc, now, how much of a factor is the plummet of the CD? How much of a factor is it in terms of where we are now? We've seen the CD plummet to about 9.40 to the American greenback. We've seen it lose ground to other major currencies in the country. And then we have the other cocktail that we have to deal with, our debt situation, which the IMF says we have to work at. But others too would say that, look, Ghana is not an island. On the back of COVID-19, the Russo-Ukrainian war, and everything that has happened. In fact, they say when you look at the United States, not too long ago, their inflationary rate stood at 2%. It has jumped fourfold to 8%. And that it is a similar thing we're seeing in Ghana. 9% sometime last year. And now we're looking at, 30+%, almost fourfold. So would you subscribe to those who say this is just a reflection of what is happening, across the world? And that, mind you, if we compare ourselves to the likes of Ivory Coast and others, in the past, right from the start, our inflationary levels were high, even in the 60s and 70s. And so this is merely a spillover over the decades. Do you agree with that argument?
To a large extent, I would say that, yes, when you look at the trend globally, you see that the world has gone through a significant negative shock, and that has had a negative impact on almost all economies with rising prices and all that. So indeed, it makes us situate the discussion to say that, like you rightly indicated, Ghana is not an island. But when you look at overall general price levels, and we quote, for instance, Francophone countries, for most of the Francophone countries, their economic arrangements, because we are dealing more with our independent central bank, their economic arrangements are quite different, where their currency is strictly pegged against the franc. And so in that sense, you tend not to see the persistent fluctuations that we get in our prices compared to their economies. But to a large extent, you are asking what is the impact of, for instance, the pressure of the currency on price levels. There's something we call basically the pass-through effects. So, for example, if you are importing stuff and the item you are importing, for instance, is $100. At the beginning of the year, the $100 was about 650 Ghana cedis. Now you are talking about 920 Ghana cedis thereabout. The item still remains the same item, but it's just the medium of exchange, the cedi that you are exchanging to purchase, that has gone up. And we are also in a situation where, because of global increase in prices globally, you find that now the item may be slightly above $100, about maybe 105 or 110, depending on where it's coming. So to a large extent, the volatility, the vulnerability of the cedis significantly plays a role in the inflation rates that we are seeing, because most of the items in the consumer basket, we're talking about over 29,000 items in the consumer basket. A chunk of the items in the basket are imported. And so long as they are imported, it means that we don't have control over the prices. And
which is why you were referencing that we have to be more dependent on what we cultivate here or what we manufacture here. That was the point.
Exactly. And the inflation we are also seeing, to some extent, is also as a result of challenges on the supply end. So when we are talking about the inflation, it is either from demand, where we say too much money is chasing fewer goods, or supply side, where producers are not being able to produce because of challenges.
Right.
So in this scheme of things, how do you tackle it? We see that persistently, the Bank of Ghana would come up and increase the prime rate. That also has a negative effect on the shocks that are occurring on the supply side. So I believe that for us to tackle the inflation on the supply side, we need to address the major challenges that are being faced by the manufacturing sector and our industrialization drive, so that once we are able to make some progress, we could get a bit of relief from the consistent pressure that is on the economy. And also when you talk about the debt levels, because we are consistently spending beyond our means, and those spending to a large extent are not going into productive sources of the economy. You find that government budget deficit is consistently financed by borrowing, whether external or internal.
Okay.
Externally, when we go and borrow, we get some foreign exchange, and that eases the pressure on the currency. These days, with the downgrade of the economy and basically Ghana being shut out of the, of the investment
Eurobond market and all that.
See that those flows are not coming in. When you ask over time, the issue of syndicated loans, cocoa syndicated loans, these days you find that those are not coming in because of the peculiar situation that we find the economy.
Right.
So I believe that whatever arrangements we are having with the World Bank, we need to facilitate things so that it's all about speculation and building confidence in the economy for prospective investors to know that, yes, Ghana is a safe place where they could invest, for us to get the inflow of the foreign currency to ease the burden in the short to medium term, whilst we work on the productive aspect in the medium to long term, so that we don't get back to this again.
Doc, I have a bit of a compound question for you to wrap the conversation. But before I get to that, very quickly, as you spoke about not overshooting it when it comes to our own expenditure, it just came to mind, and I just want a very quick answer. The National Cathedral, $547 million that we're hoping to pump into that. It could shoot up even further. Seed money of $25 million. Looking at where we find ourselves, should we put a stop to it for now? I want a very quick answer before I wrap with the questions I have for you.
I believe that it's a very political issue.
Looks like the internet is not our friend on that.
But for me, so in that sense, it is quite...
I mean, I don't want a political answer. I want you to speak as an economist in terms of our reality.
So in terms of our reality, as an economist, I would say that we need to prioritize what are our pressing needs at the moment.
So is the National Cathedral a pressing need?
At the moment, I would not say it's a pressing need.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. So I want to wrap with you. Guta, and we have Dr. Obeng standing by. Guta has said that, look, if we don't rein in the cedis fall, it could end up at 10 cedis to the dollar, or even more by end of year, which would mean that if it's at 10 cedis, you would require 1 million Ghana cedis just to get $100,000 to do business with. That is the first part of the question. And we've heard from the likes of Professor Steve Hank, who says our inflation is way higher than we are purporting it in Ghana. He has classified our cedi as a junk currency. We've seen Standard & Poor's and Fitch also downgrade us, to CCC, both of them. And now we have the situation where we're in a bit of a free fall. Steve Hank of Johns Hopkins University calls for a currency board beyond the central bank. What is your take on all of this? Do we need a separate body to deal with the free fall of the cedi, to stem the tide of its fall? Because it factors into this conversation of inflation we're having. That's the final bit for you.
I believe that whatever the arrangement is, I don't necessarily think that we need a special currency board to be able to do that. Because how do you stabilize the currency? A currency board comes in. It's basically based on your reserves. There's too much demand for dollars. If you have some reserves, you pump it onto the market, and then it eases the pressure. So basically, if you do not have and you fix an artificial rate out there, the black markets would be flourishing. And you see that even up to date, you find that the quotations you get in the formal financial sector would be way lower than what you do when you are trading with other people, which are so there's a lot of shadow economy that is organized around the currency because there is a price differential. The price you get in the formal financial sector is way lower. I'm sure that when you go to the bank, they'll probably be quoting something like 8 point something to you. But when you go on the real markets to deal with the Forex Bureau and others, you might get it at a higher rate. So at this point, the issue is for the central bank to be able to have a hang on the free fall of the cedi. And how the central bank can do that is options that allows the inflow of foreign currency because the demand is certainly outstripping the supply. When you look at handles for earning foreign currency, where is it coming from? And those are the issues that needs to be explored. And when we are exploring that, we also need to keep our eyes on the persistent demand for the, the dollar. Can we explore options where policy initiatives can encourage members of GOTA to probably find alternatives of producing some of the things they import locally so that we ease the persistent pressure on the currency? So these are issues that needs to be addressed, both from the demand side and the supply side. But if you ask me, I think that an independent central bank that is managing the currency is good enough. So long as we have reserves to support it, you find that we always have control over the fluctuations in the currency.
Thank you so much, Doc, for making time for us this morning. Dr. Priscilla Chumesi, lecturer of economics at the University of Ghana. Do have a good day.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a lovely day yourself.
Thank you. Let's now move on to some of our other guests, and we still have Dr. Joseph Obeng online. We also have Samson Asaki Awingobit. Let me quickly bring in Samson Awingobit, and then I'll bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng before I come into the studio. Samson, so you have lamented time and again the increment in inflation. You've spoken about the falling, the spiral of the cedi. And it has proven problematic for you. Now look at the recent tide of the free fall of the cedi compounded by the inflationary rate. What would be your fundamental understanding of the situation, appreciation of the situation, and where we find ourselves currently? Please unmute, Samson.
Thank you very much. Let me say a good morning to my colleagues there, and especially to my senior comrade, Dr. Obeng from GOTA. I must say that I am 100% in agreement with the professor in the US who is calling for a currency board, because our Bank of Ghana Financial Committee, that is the board of directors that see to our currency, prime rate, and other things, is out of obsolete. They have no use again. They could not do what they're supposed to do. So
you say those at the helm of affairs at the central bank are obsolete. Yes, they are useless. Is that what you're saying?
They are obsolete. They have no use.
Dr. Ernest Addison and his group.
They are obsolete. I'm telling you, these guys doesn't know how to manage currency and how to rationalize this kind of city depreciation. Why am I saying this? Why is it that the Bank of Ghana, just like Dr. Prisler said, the Bank of Ghana offload forex to the commercial banks every day, every week? Is that not it? Then you go, Dr. Ben will put his money at his bank, want to transfer to pay his taking supplier, then his bank manager or the trade department manager will call him and tell him to go to Alaji Atitole, go to Tudu, and they'll have it. Point is, where did they get the forex from? Where did the black market
but is it not a bit harsh? No, hold on, Samson. Hold on, Samson. That is why I went back to ask you. I mean, if you say they are obsolete, outdated, useless, they are the same persons. Hold on, they are the same ones who have tweaked our policy rate, who have implemented other measures to stem the tide of the free fall of the cedi. How can you then refer to them in such terms?
When interest rate was 14.5, we were asking the Bank of Ghana to talk to Commercial Bank to reduce their interest rate to be in consonant with Bank of Ghana prime rate. Did you hear Bank of Ghana governor say anything? When in March 2020, this year, 21st of this year, 21st March 2022, when they upped their prime rate by 70%, you saw the governor of Bank of Ghana jump into the media, telling Commercial Bank to up their interest rate. What policy are you talking about? Today, you were asked how will we do to shore up our city depreciation to hold it on. We are in this country when our oil, that we can't produce our own crude oil. We export it, isn't it? Now we export it, we sell it per our GIPC laws and whatever laws that we have in this country, including the Bank of Ghana. We've allowed these investors to keep 80% of, or even 90% of the forest in Europe, instead of those money to come back to Ghana, stay here for some time so that they can cushion our city. Because if we export, you have to bring your proceeds back home. Is that not true? Do you see the Bank of Ghana changing the policy to say, look, yes, we know the GIPC law give you this, but look at the current devaluation of our city. We strongly want to believe that if you export the crude, it's coming from Ghana, bring the proceeds back, trade with us for some time before, if you, at the end of the year, after profit after tax, then you can repatriate. We have many of them mining companies. They mine our gold here, take it out, sell it, then they bring only 5% proceeds. It's only 5% that comes back. But could you imagine if these mining companies, after sales in Europe, will bring the proceeds back home, and this forest will sit out of Bank of Ghana? Do you think our city will be depreciating in this way? That's why I said they are obsolete.
Those are words that now, we hold on. Let me just issue this disclaimer. We dissociate ourselves from those words. Those are your choice of words. If you would like to change them, fine. But as a media entity, we cannot subscribe to the use of such words to refer to them.
Why do you want me to change them? Is it not true that the Bank of Ghana sees to the currency?
I gave you an option. I said if you wanted to change them.
Yes. When we have black market, that ought not to be carrying millions of dollars sitting in the market for Ghanaians to go there and buy dollars, carrying it back at their risk, at the peril of their life, before they can then bring it back to the commercial bank, which the Bank of Ghana offload the dollars to. So this, if I say that they have outdated their mandate that we've given them as people of Ghana. We have given them a mandate to manage our currency. We have given them a mandate to make sure that where there are illegality, you zoom in. Was it not the Bank of Ghana that collapsed the financial institution to say that they were not doing very well? It was through the mandate Ghanaians gave them. It was the mandate, and that same mandate is still in them. Why are they holding on? Why will I go to bank, interbank, see 8 point something, then I will put in money looking for forex to trade, then the bank manager will come back and call me and tell me to go to Alaji, who have known the professional way of handling money, but he has the forex for me to go there and buy. If I say this, you will say I should withdraw. Well, I will withdraw for the sake of your program. But the point is, I strongly believe that our Bank of Ghana is not doing what it ought to do. And they are putting the pressure on us where we are today.
Two quick ones. Make it your answers very brief on this one before I move on to our other guests. On the bit about royalties, you spoke about 5% that we get from gold. Recently, we heard from Dr. Steve Mantea, formerly of the PIAC, who says that we should draw up an entirely new royalty system among 16 other suggestions he's been putting out. And he says we should be looking at getting at least 25%. Is that something you agree with? And add to that, how has the inflationary rate and the fall of the cedi impacted or put a squeeze on your members as importers and exporters in terms of the activities you engage in? A minute to answer that.
I agree with Dr. Mantea for saying that we need to relook at our laws again. I agree with him completely. That's what I was saying. That you cannot take our raw materials here out, make the huge dollars, and will not bring it back to support us for some time, but we rather bring only 5% and 10% and left the rest sitting elsewhere. Then we are suffering here. Our city is rational. The other aspect is you don't need the professor or the economists are going to tell you that with the current inflation rate, it is eating into your pocket, my pocket, Mr. Obe's pocket. My friend Magbodu is in your studio, right? His pocket, because we all are consumers. You go to the market today, you go to the market tomorrow, then you go and meet different prices. Today, inflation is 31.7%. It tells you that if you are carrying 1,000, your 1,000 deflated by 31%. It's even more than that. And that's why I am wholeheartedly agreeing with the professor in the state. Because of his words are harsh. The way my words was harsh this morning, that you draw my attention that if I can withdraw my statement because it was too harsh to them. But we need to say a spade, call a spade. That is the fact of the matter, my brother. That is the fact of the matter. Prices of gold will continue to go up. If you look at, I issued a statement yesterday, and I said that if at least this current VAT amendment that the DRA did and they implemented.
Yeah, you're talking of the standard rate and all that.
Yes, exactly. If they can do something about food, medicine, petrol, because transportation, these are necessity. Very important key things.
Right.
From where the inflation is going through, we strongly believe that at least if they can exempt these areas, it will help Ghanaians. So I can tell you, my brother, we are in hard times and we cannot continue to pamper government. I have heard that the Deputy Minister of Finance is saying that they had loans, procured some loans, and they are working around to make sure that they control the cedi depreciation. Cedi is at 9 point something. What is he talking about? You go to the commercial bank, you don't get it. Finance Ministry, don't they have oversight responsibility on Bank of Ghana? Don't Bank of Ghana have oversight responsibility on the commercial banks?
Right.
This is the challenge that we have seen. These are human-factored inflation, human-factored cedi depreciation we are seeing. Bank of Ghana is not doing what it ought to do.
Okay.
They have to sit up. They must sit up.
Right. They must sit up. The Bank of Ghana, the central bank, must sit up. That is the message, underlying message from Samson Asaki Awingobit. I do hold for me, Samson. Let me also bring in Mark Bedu Abuaje, Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce. I'll start with you from whether you see any surprise in where the inflationary rate currently is pegged at. You can bring in the bit about the cedi, how it is impacting that. And, of course, commerce. You're also in there. Yam, for example. We are now the world's #1 exporter of yam. I don't know whether you're aware of that, but I don't know whether we're putting in place the right measures. For example, now that Dr. Chumesi, for example, is saying we need more homegrown, not just policies, but food to ensure that we are not importing so much into our country. How do you react to this from the commercial point of things?
Okay, I don't know where even to start. I've put together
I've put together quite a number of them, but start where you will.
So, as a chamber, we are not surprised with the current rate of inflation. In fact, if you take a look at the budget review, the Minister of Finance reviewed the inflationary rate from 8% to 28.5%, which means that he's expecting that at the end of the year, it will be at that level. The way inflation behaves, it doesn't come down just like that. So he was supposed to move to a point, peak before it will come down. So we were expecting that at least it will go up to maybe October, but the rate of growth will be reducing. And that's what we're experiencing now. If you look at the growth, realize that for this particular month, for that of July, it has reduced. It's
just 1.9%.
Yes.
I mean, I say just, but I mean, it's huge in terms of the impact. But it's 1.9% compared to other months.
Exactly. So it will reduce up to a point, and then it will peak and it will come down. That's why he projected that to be 8.5. So we are not looking at what is happening. There is no way that inflation at the end of the year will be below the 20. It may even be higher than that. So we were not actually surprised about that. But let's look at the factors that are driving.
Maybe let's start with the cedi, because Samson was speaking so passionately about that, and he feels the central bank has not done enough. What is your take?
Yeah, I don't want to go into that, but I think that it should be a collective responsibility. The central bank, they have a role to ensure that they put in place all the monetary policy measures to ensure that the stability in terms of the cedi. You and I also have a role to play to ensure that we also develop a taste of consuming the locally produced goods, so that we don't continuously import. In fact, just last year, we imported 2 billion worth of just 4 food products: rice, tomatoes, soya, and I think wheat. Of all the 4, we have 3 that we can conveniently produce in Ghana, with the exception of wheat because of the nature of our. So I find it difficult to understand why we will be importing all these things. 2 billion, which is enough. If you can get just 80% of it, the challenges we are having in terms of getting dollar-denominated bonds would have been resolved.
And even if you look at 2 other aspects that we usually expend so much on, sugar, for example, and what we could do.
Yes.
And we see Commander, in recent times we've been told about it's being revamped and everything, yet still nothing to show. And poultry, for example, look at what has happened to our poultry industry.
And we have the capacity to do that. We have to empower the private sector, the productive sector, to be able to produce what we import and also export. If we don't do that, the Bank of Ghana cannot do anything. You need the hard cash, you need the dollar. And the only way you can get the dollar is to export and then get a dollar. If you don't have it, the Bank of Ghana can do all the things, but it will not be able to stabilize the cedi because of the nature and structure of our economy. So we need to, I think we have been discussing this over and over and over again. We need to take action. It shouldn't be a lip service of we want to industrialize. What is it exactly that we have to do to ensure that we change the structure of our economy? You made mention of Commander, and I'm surprised we pumped over 35 million into Commander, and for over 6 or 7 years, we've not had even 1 cube of sugar from Commander. Why? Because
and now we're going to pump similar sums into it again.
Yes, so when you are setting up a factory, there are certain things that you need and you have to do. Proper value chain analysis to ensure that I'm getting raw material from here. These are the people I'm using. This is the market.
But we were told that was done, where we're going to source the sugar cane from within the community and all of that.
We are now crying that we don't have raw materials. Why is it that we haven't been able to produce anything? We need to interrogate these issues and find a lasting solution. Let's put politics aside. If you continue to politicize our economic development policies, we always find ourselves in this. Now it is affecting MPP, it's affecting NDC, it's affecting CPP. Everybody in Ghana is being affected. Let's come together and ensure that we put in place measures. The government, as I said, will have a role to play, you and I, and also the private sector. But I think that for us to have immediate solution to this, we should begin to empower the private sector and look at how we can change the structure.
I have a few follow-up questions for you. The taste, and you could call it an acquired taste for this or that. Some of these that I'm donning may not necessarily be produced here. Some of them from Turkey, from other parts of Europe and all of that. But maybe I'm doing this simply because of this specific show. A lot of the time you would see me in African prints. Even the African prints, a lot of them are not manufactured here. You know that for a fact. A lot of them are from China and other places. So how do we get that taste remedied? It would involve policies, systems. Exactly. If you leave the ordinary people, they will not shift from what they have come to know. That is the first aspect. Then, in dealing with the cedi, you say it's a two-pronged affair. The people themselves, and of course, that also feeds into our foreign appetite. And then, the central bank itself, or governance systems. But you would agree with me that it behoves more on the central bank, which is supposed to monitor or manage our monetary affairs. So I'll go back to the question, has the central bank done enough? Because you don't expect the ordinary Ghanaian. The ordinary Ghanaian, through push and pull factors, does not determine where the cedi goes. It is the central bank that has to regulate, and government, by extension, that has to determine, maybe like the Nigerians have done. Rice, we're going to reduce our component, grow a lot here, and maybe if you're going to import rice, the taxes on it are going to be this high to encourage people. I mean, that goes without saying, doesn't it?
Yes, I agree with you. I think they have to do more. I'll give you a typical example. If you go to South Africa, you can't just walk to the black market and say you are changing a dollar. The processes that you have to go through, they monitor every dollar that enters the economy and that leaves the economy. By so doing, you'll be able to know what we have so that you shut down basically or reduce the effect of the black market. In Ghana, dollar is just like anything on the market. And you can't manage your currency like that, where people have access to it. So if he goes to the bank and the bank says, I don't have it, he can get it somewhere at a higher rate. Once he needs a dollar, he will go. That's where there are a lot of speculation in the system. Because people are now cashing in on that arbitrary. They just go, they buy it, and then they keep it. And then when somebody needs it, they sell it at a high. But once you need it, you pay for it. So they have to do more to ensure that they bring some sanity within the forex market. How are they monitoring the forex bureaus? To a large extent, even they have a way of, but the person that are largely over there, and mind you, they keep a chunk of our dollar. And they're able to dictate the pace of the price of the dollar. Where the central bank...
When the black market shouldn't even be in business.
Exactly.
It's illegal.
It's illegal. What is the central bank doing about it?
You know, there's a popular spot. I always make reference to it. I will not mention the police station. But you know there's a police station here in Accra. Mm. And right next to the police station, there are black market people operating.
So what is the police
doing? And it's illegal, but right next to them. In fact, when you go there, you see them rushing on
And
you.
I think it also has to do with a lot of education. Find out if the policeman is aware of what they are doing.
How can a police officer not be aware?
No, he's a police officer. There's a possibility that he knows there's a black man. Does he know that it's illegal? These are things that I think the central bank should come out to educate everybody, so that even when you see that, you should be able to at least alert the police that what is going on there is illegal, and they have to act on that. So for me, it wouldn't be, but there's a huge responsibility on the government, both the monetary policy sector and then the fiscal policy sector. In fact, if the central bank decides to do all the things that we are asking for, and from the Ministry of Finance, the fiscal sector is not working, we will still find ourselves in this situation. Okay. So there should be a collaborative and synergy between the monetary policies and the fiscal policy before we'll be able to achieve the stability that we are asking for. And of course, inflation, for me, it doesn't help anybody. For businesses, one of the things that we've been asking for is stability in the economy, so that we'll be able to predict. That is very key. Predictability is very key. Now we don't have it. Confidence is low. And when inflation goes up, the pass-through effect, almost everything. Monitor the growth of the PPI, the Producer Price Index. It increases more than the growth of the CPI. At the moment...
Consumer Price Index.
Yes, the consumer price. At the moment, as of June, it was 38%. Which means that on average, your cost of production is 38%, excluding any other thing. Now, that is how much you are paying for. And businesses are...
Which definitely means that there's going to be a rollover passing on to the consumer.
Exactly. So businesses now, what we are doing is to ensure that we are just in operation. So either we are...
You're breaking even.
You're breaking even, or you are reducing your profit margin. Others are also ensuring that they are just even keeping their customers and themselves in business. They might not necessarily be breaking even because of the challenges, but because I don't want to lose my customers, because I have a business to protect, let me just suffer from this bit of losses for now to ensure that when things get better.
So some of your members are actually incurring losses.
Oh, yes.
Losses.
Exactly.
But they just stay in business because this is my customer pool. I don't want to lose
Exactly.
them.
But how long
how
long can you stay in a loss? Consistently, you run down your business because the bank manager is chasing you for the loan.
The loan and all of that.
And interest rates is up.
It's interesting, the picture you paint. It's pretty dire. It's worrying because we've had a lot of people. Just yesterday, interestingly, I was speaking to someone who supplies toiletries. And she was telling me about one customer where she has to increase the prices, but she can't because the person keeps telling her, look, maybe you can just retain the 10 pesos that you get on each one, when she could have gone for 40 or 50 pesos in terms of what her profit would be. But she has to keep it there just to keep that customer. So it resonates with what you're saying. But let me bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng. Now, Guta, recently, you've been complaining a lot about the free fall of the cedi. And now we are talking rising inflation. Again, 31.7% this time. Is it crunch time for the central bank and the executive especially to maybe adopt other measures before we get the 3 billion from the IMF that we want now to shore up our economy? Is it crunch time?
Yeah, I agree with all the panelists, all the submissions that they made. As a matter of fact, we have to depart from the traditional ways of doing things. It has not helped us. And that, if you say that is a crunch time, I do agree. In that, if you create room for black market, then it will operate. Don't forget that the prices at the black market is higher than those of the bank. So if the bank is providing cheaper rates, but people still find it comfortable dealing with the black market, then you know that there's fundamental issues here. And let me tell you, most of even the bigger multinational companies and all that find it comfortable even to deal with this black market. So there's space for them to trade. And what has created this space? It is because of the traditional ways of doing things at the Bank of Ghana. The stringent requirement of documents. Sometimes it's not even convenient or comfortable dealing through the banks. Because instead of relaxing this documentation, because after all, what do you want to know? Evidence that you've imported. But they do it as if you are under scrutiny or as if you are under serious fraud office scrutiny or some sort. So it deters people from even doing business through the mainstream banks and all that. I think we have to relax on those things and then make sure that people are encouraged to do business through the banks so that they can have an idea of the actual volume of trading or importation that we do. As it were now, most of the figures that they bring as volumes of trading is speculative. They do not know because we are talking about the bulk going through this black market and all that. We use rules and regulations and laws to define these things. We use laws to make sure that forest is well arranged and then the demand of it, the supply and all that. But if you leave it so empty without any rules and regulations and all that, like I would say in the case of the investment laws, then the demand will always outweigh that of the supply because we leave some of our investment laws so loosely for people to have their way. So I think we have to use our investment laws to tighten because I agree that the major cause of our problem is excessive importation. Nobody can take it away from us. But I've also said that we know where this problem is. We have investment laws. And so if you want to deter excessive importation, then you use investment laws to drive potential investors to industrialization, to more productive areas, rather than encouraging them to the trading aspect or where it will increase dumping and all that. And we have the laws to do that. It's as simple as that. If we are not doing that, we cannot come out and blame anybody. We are included, we are traders and all that, and always the concentration is on us. When we talk about the forest, every Ghanaian will say that, oh, you people, you import too much. But we've said that we import, our part of importation is about 15%. The bulk of importation is done by the multinationals, and it's obvious. Go to Spinters and you see the articulators lineup. When we go to Dubai, we see that we do consolidation for only 120-footer container. You see about 5 people buying just one container. So it cannot be said, and the blame they put on us, where we know where the actual problem is. Let's tighten.
So you feel, essentially, from what you're saying, you feel we're not hitting the nail on the head. We are not addressing the problem from its root.
Yes, we are not doing virtually nothing. So you see, we are talking even about the supply of the dollar. Yes, I've told you we've been getting balance of trade surplus. For the past 3 years, we've been getting the surplus. It means that export outweighs that of import, isn't it? Because of inclusion of oil and all that. And so if supply of the money, the supply of the forex is more, then what is instead of the CD being strengthened, is getting depreciated. It means that the demand is far outstrip that of the supply that we've managed to get. And so you find out why, what is consuming this scarce resource that we've gotten. And that's where the Chinese malls who bring the bulk of dumping goods and all that, and so Ghanaians, about 30% of our customers have all gone to this one particular mall and buy all the goods, and yet they did not bring any equity investment or benchmark investment.
Let me just hold you on that point. So you use the word dumping, and then you talk about basically infiltration of other nationals. You've even spoken about the fact that it is a lot of these MNCs who are impacting the economy by way of the imports and everything else. But let me ask you, do you feel we don't have proper regulation when it comes to this? Because admittedly, we have Indians, Lebanese, Syrians now, Chinese, among others, who have taken key sectors of our economy. And it appears Ghanaians themselves, like you have been saying, are bleeding. Do you feel we don't have, or we're not implementing the right policies to ensure that Ghanaians benefit from the economic system?
Exactly. We are not doing exactly so. Because what we have done is that in our investment law, the requirement is that you bring in $1 million in kind of goods. Mostly they bring it in kind of goods and not even the lodgement of $1 million. So when the person brings goods in kind of goods, the person is finished. And presto, the doors are open for the person, whether it is a mega supermarket, whether it's a mega wholesale and all that. What the law should have gone ahead to say is that they will ask you, now, what capacity, what volume of trade are you coming to do? And how much is required? So then, if the person is bringing 500 containers for a year, because if I'm in Ghana, I will have to change the money and send it and buy these goods. But he hasn't gotten money in the first place in Ghana. And so he will bring the goods from China mainly. And then he bring the goods, about 500 containers, without bringing the actual money that you use to transfer. So if the person have to bring 500 containers, you ask him the value of these 500 containers, and then that amount is deposited at the Bank of Ghana. It's a requirement. So if the person bring it, then you use that money to import the goods that you want to import. Because he hasn't gotten money here in Ghana. So how can he change money to Ghana? It means that he is only dumping the goods because there's a floodgate open to him, a country that is so loose. And so you bring all the manufacturers will tell this company, we have these goods, we can't sell, send it to Ghana for us, and they bring it. No, that's not how to go. If you do that, then you are derailing the effort of your industrialization drive. So your industries, why is it that they keep on telling the local to patronize made in Ghana goods, And the same is not done for the mega supermarkets who also do retail like us. Why? Why are they shy of doing that? Let me tell you, when it comes to supermarkets, then of course, our investment law should also structure that because we are doing retail, you have also to sell the made in Ghana goods. So your shelf line should also contain about 30% of what is made in Ghana. That is your investment law, and it's take or leave. So it should not be said that the person will come and open a big supermarket, very big across the country, and all the goods, when you go inside the shop, the supermarket, is from South Africa. About 70%, 80% from South Africa, others from other countries. What are you doing to your economy? You are destroying it. You are just promoting other. So those, when they talk to us that we have to consume made in Ghana goods, they are talking to the wrong people. Because we have the shops. We, the locals, we have the shops. The manufacturing companies do not have the shops. So we buy all the local manufactured goods and sell. And then the shortfall of demand is what the locals also import again. Can the same thing be said for these multinationals? No. The multinationals do not go and buy from them. Right. And yet you think you are doing any good to anybody. So the investment law should be able to tighten and bring a lot more stringent measures that will require that if you come to trading, then you have to bring the benchmark investment, the money that you are going to use to bring the goods, you have to bring it before you bring the goods. Otherwise, where are you going to get the money to bring the goods? So you will just be here, and then containers, thousands of containers just come without any visible investment because somebody just declared 1 million at the investment and got a certification to dump goods here. We have lost it. The same can be said on the juiciest areas of the economy that I've always been saying, that we have to make a conscious effort to invest in these areas by way of our investment laws, which will say that we do not give all this sector to a foreigner, and that is a foreigner have about 55% in this area. The rest can be shared as can be floated as shares or deliberate government efforts to get money to invest, especially in the communications and all that. Let me tell you, if the Euro bonds that we have gone for and all that, those billions that we collected, and we have used some of them to buy about 40% from most of these telcos, is it not a productive and prudent investment that the country would have done? And that would have been able to retain some of the gains that these companies are getting. And this is exactly what I'm trying to say. Because other than that, we will just be dancing around the issues. And that's it. So okay. For the balance of trade surplus, we have it. But let me come to the inflation that we are getting now. Let me tell you, most of these things are cost-push inflation. It's accumulation of costs from where we buy our goods to Ghana itself, the effects of the Ukraine war, petrol, and all that. So this particular inflation is not as a result that more money is chasing fewer goods. No. So that a Bank of Ghana, if you want solution, you say that because I want to mop up asset liquidity, I'm increasing the policy rate so that more money will be mopped up from the system. No, we all know that there's no more money in the system. So that one also come and compound the situation, the cost. For all the pillars that all indicators that give us the enabling environment to do trading have been affected. That's the interest rates that we pay have gone up from probably somewhere 20% to now about around 30%. It's so huge. And then we are talking about the inflationary figures. when there's inflation, it doesn't help us because, you know, this business that we do not do it in isolation. We do it with our customers, our teeming customers, the consuming public. And that's if the purchasing power of the consumer is affected. And in this case, the consumer's purchasing ability has been affected by over 30%. So he is limited. So if the person was able to buy goods with the same amount, about 10 of them, now the person will struggle to buy for a quantity of that same item. Means that it has affected your turnover. And businesses thrive on turnover. If you do not have this turnover, it means that you are unable to service your debt and service your supplier's credit. So then we are in confusion. So I heard Mark saying that it comes to this time that most of us are unable to even pass on the cost to this consumer that we cherish so much.
Right.
It's true. What Mark said is 100% true. But most people misconstrue us when prices go up naturally by accumulation of costs and say that traders are profiteering. They don't know what they are saying.
Okay, just hold for me there. Just hold for me there, Dr. Obeng. A very passionate delivery. But before I come back into the studio to Mark Bedu Abwaje, let's cross over to my colleague Samuel Kojo-Brace, who has also been interacting with some people. Here's what he has for us. Samuel, if you can hear me, do take it away. What are people saying, sharing with you on the back of the latest inflationary figures?
To find out from them how the inflation is impacting on their work and in their life. Chiefs, Chief at Zeng. How is inflation impacting on your job and your life?
Mostly people were patronizing our taxi. Nowadays, they are because of the fact of the increment of the fares and those things, they've gone to the truck drivers now have been conveying them to the ministries. So we are finding it very, very, very difficult in making our sales. And then the fuel too, the fuel price have gone up. It's causing a very serious problem to us.
So it means people are not boarding because the transport fares have gone up.
They are very high. Okay. That's why.
How about the home?
We can't afford buying. I can't afford about our daily meal.
Right. Thank you very much. Grateful. So let me get more viewpoints here. Chief, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay. So you're also a driver here.
Yes, I'm here.
The latest inflation means indicates that transport alone is over 44%. How is that impacting on your work?
You know, this our transport business we are doing, everything depends on the fuel. Without the fuel, there is no substitute. You don't use water to replace petrol or diesel. So it's only that you are going to buy. So when we come to work, here is the case. You see how we have parked here. Since morning I came here, it's only once I was able to go to ministries, which is 20 cities. So imagine, it's almost 9 o'clock now, or going to 9 o'clock. By the end of the day, maybe you buy fuel 150, which let's put in the old CD 1.5, which is 3 gallons at the moment, or more than even less than 3 gallons. And that 3 gallons will not even take you up to even 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock. You have to add up. But the income that you receive from the work will not even reach that 1.5. So at the end of the day, you are lost. Are you getting me? You are going to make sales. How much are you going to deposit? You eat. You see? So all this is affecting us. I know the situation or the whole world is suffering from so many things. But I always talk about my work. It's the work that I'm doing to survive. So if the petrol is very high, I cannot even buy, or I'll borrow money. Here is the case. At first they gave us a coupon you used to buy the fuel. And when they give you 50 cedis, I remember 2008 or something, it's 14.5 liter, that 50 cedis. Now that 50 cedis is just a gallon, which is about 5.3 or so liter. which will not even take you up to 11 or 2 hours. So it is affecting our work. The problem is the fuel system. You know that when fuel, gas, everything goes on, everything changes. You get to market, people say, oh, they are too more. They have increased it. You see, so we need to look at it. That if there is some substitute or some means to help the system, that it will help all of us.
People also say that food prices and other prices of other goods are up because of transport fares. How do you react to that?
Yeah, that is exactly what I said. A market woman goes to a market maybe from Amasama to Accra here. The load costs about maybe 50 cedis. Now he goes there, he say 1.5. He's not going to carry it on his or her head. You have to bring it. So when you also bring it, you have to see the outcome of the whole thing. How much am I going to make and get the capital? Otherwise, you will lose. So the fuel costs so many things in the country. That one there is automatic. No one cannot change it. It is true. So if they can look at it for us, at least.
Thank you very much. So he's made his point. Let me try and engage some more drivers. Let's talk to this man here to get his viewpoint. This is still the Citizen Microphone on the AM show on the Joy News channel. Chief, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
By His grace, I'm fine.
Great. Let's talk about inflation. How is inflation impacting on your work? Your colleagues say, well, it has made your work difficult. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's really so, because looking at it, the passengers are not boarding, because the inflation is having impact on them. Because now some people, they will board the car to some point, then they will alight, then they walk to their final destination because they don't have the money to complete the whole journey. Because now when you go to the market, people are complaining, prices have shoot up. Yesterday, for instance, a rice that I bought at 50, when I went back yesterday to get one, is now 55 within a couple of days. So you can see. Now, yesterday, the government statistician came out to say that now the rate of inflation is now 31 point something, almost 32%. So you can imagine how things are going. So the government management team, those who are in the helm of affairs, those who are handling the economy, they have to put things together.
The handlers of the economy must up their game. That's the word on the streets, especially from the taxi drivers. But let me come back into the studio. Mark Bedu-Abuaje, CEO, National Chamber of Commerce, is still here with us. So initially you were talking about the inflationary rate and the fact that it must peak before we'll see some fall. Until it has peaked, and we cannot tell when it will peak. We heard the government statisticians say that let's not deceive ourselves into thinking too quickly that it has peaked, just because we saw a 1.9% increment compared to the maybe 3 point something or 2 point something percent increments we saw in previous months. Now, how much further do you feel this can be stretched? I mean, how bad could it be? How far could it go? Because we have all the other components in there, including risk of debt distress and all of that. You follow the Bloomberg charts. And then when it comes to the cedi, do you think it could get worse? It could erode in terms of value even further? I mean, what do you see?
Well, I think that the policies that probably we started with, we are now seeing some positive effects. That is why the rate of growth is going down. But it doesn't mean that...
And we are talking what? Maybe February, March?
Yes.
And now we are in August.
Exactly.
After what? 4 or 5 months?
That is how inflation works. If you know the variables as well, you can look at where the inflation is coming from. If it's more of monetary issue, if it's more of the general understanding that more money are chasing fewer goods, then the monetary policy becomes more effective when you increase the policy rate. You can easily mop up because interest rate goes up and people are investing and you mop up money. But when it's supply side constraint, it lingers on for a long time because you can't just grow maize now and expect that the next day you have effect. So that is why we are seeing this slow growth. Means that it will take much longer time for us to address the supply side constraint. And most of these things may not even have control over them. Now look at imported inflation, which is 33.5 or so, which means that whatever we are importing, there is this component of inflation in it, which we don't have control over. It means that you may put in your policies, but we may not be able to resolve because Ukraine war is affecting almost everybody. Now, most of even the manufacturing companies in Ghana, they import their raw materials, which means that they are importing 33.5% of such inflation. The freight cost, even the duties, the levies at the port. Now, if you import one commodity, you are likely to pay no less than 17 different kinds of levies. All these feed into the cost of the.
Is it high time we looked at some of those components, like the freight people, the traders have been calling for that look? Let's cut it down, or let's look at VAT. Let's take a second look at
exactly. That is why I'm asking for a collaborative action between the monetary and the fiscal policy. The fiscal policy looks at the taxes, levies at the port. That is where the Ministry of Finance, they have control over.
Right.
Now, if you go to Côte d'Ivoire, there are certain products that they have reduced the taxes or taken out the taxes. For instance, wheat, because they know the cost is up. So if you add up some of these things, you are likely importing more inflation. Why is it that we can't do a similar thing? Otherwise, we'll continuously be importing inflation. So let's look at some of these drastic measures and ensure that we stabilize our economy.
Staying quickly on that, I know you want to move on, but staying quickly on that, because now we are looking at remedial measures.
Yes.
There's also the bit about diesel, for example.
Yeah.
And you see the percentage increment, I believe over 100%. That is stark.
Yes.
It is steep. And you look at what we use diesel for, like I said, agricultural equipment, buses, generators, and others. It means we're in big trouble, because if you're thinking agricultural equipment, the farmer is going to be affected. When you're thinking, the buses and the rest, people in transport and those who bought are going to be impacted.
Exactly.
Generators, businesses are going to be impacted. So can we, for example, look at the taxes on fuel? Is this something we should take a second look at?
I think we should take a second look at it. I've heard other arguments that if we do that, it's going to affect the economy. I think
the president said on May Day that it would lose about 4 billion.
And I've also heard the Minister of Energy also saying similar things. They should explain it further to us, because it's a.
You disagree?
No, to a large extent. If they should explain why they think that they cannot even do anything about it. We are not saying they should. If there is a bit, look, the reduction in fuel. Just the small reduction is having a bit of effect on some of the prices that we are having. Now, that's why the rate of growth is even down, because diesel for some time now has been stable.
Right.
It's going down. Fuel is also going down. So people are now looking at some of these dynamics. So let's look at it. You see, in situations like that, you need some drastic measure. We are not saying that reduce it. And of course, when even fuel at the world market is coming down, we find a way to put on other taxes to ensure that they rake in more revenue. What are they doing with the revenue? Do they have any reserve somewhere that in challenging times like this they can bring in just to support the business and the individual? So that is what I'm saying. In fact, we are likely, as the government statistician said, we may have a further increase in inflation. It may be the growth may be gradual in a reduced form, but it will come. I'm even doubting whether the 28.5 target for at the end of the year we'll be able to achieve. And for businesses,
you doubt we'd be able to meet the about 28.5% target of inflation?
Yes, if you're not able to peak by September, it will be difficult to achieve.
So if we peak, let's say at the end or second half of September, or let's say early October, you feel it would still impact the inflationary rate at the end of the year?
It will be difficult. It is now that we are trying to resolve some of the supply side constraints. At that time, I mean, we are in rainy season, the food will be coming, so the food prices at least will go down. But what is feeding into the food price largely is not because we have shortage in some, it's because of the cost of transportation, which of course
will also impact
diesel and other things comes in.
Right.
So if foods are in abundance and we are still having diesel and petrol going up, you are likely to have some level of inflation.
And it's interesting because when you look at wheat, for example, and we know why, we don't produce it here.
Yes.
I mean, and Russia and Ukraine, the main wheat producers across the world, are in this, war, as you would call it. The Russians would call it a special operation. So you look at all of that, and you look at the cost of bread. You see, it's gone up by over 50%.
Exactly.
So that paints a picture for you.
Yeah, but inflation is just an average. So you may have
Right.
some being up, some being down, and then you find an average, even the regional level. So that's why people are saying that it's not reflecting what is there at the market. The exact product you are buying may be at the higher side or at the lower side, but they find the average and tell you that on average, this is how prices are.
So let's just do this. Let me come to Dr. Joseph Obeng as we get ready to wrap the conversation. I'll give you gentlemen a minute and a half, maximum 2 minutes each. What should be the way forward? You've already mentioned some of them, but give us key points, bullet points, straight to the point. What should government be doing at this time to change the script that we have in terms of inflation? Dr. Obeng.
Yeah, we need a paradigm shift, complete paradigm shift of the way we do our things. To tell the truth, if you look at the inflation basket, we have the local aspect and then we have the imported. If you say that the imported one, there's a huge inflation on it because of what is happening in the world, then it's accepted. But when it comes to the local ones, it can never be accepted because we have to produce. When we produce, we have to add up value. And then when we value, we store. So when you store, you have abundance throughout the year. And so...
Which will drive prices down.
Your pricing is stabilized. So that if you are in a country that now we say that the yam is in abundance and we do not know and we do not research and we do not brainstorm how to process yam, make some chips, make some powder, make some this thing and can them, then we do not know what we are doing. Because whatever thing that we are consuming from other countries is because they research into it and then packed it and then the excess is coming here. But we have it raw, and then when the goods come, we have to force ourselves, whether we are full or not, to consume it. And then it rots. Then the farmers lose their money, they don't have appetite to grow again. And then the next season, they didn't grow, and then the price have escalated. This is not rocket science. We have to add value. We have to research. We have to know that even in the value chain of cassava and all that, even the juice and the water that comes from the cassava is the starch and all that. Cocoa, the chaff of the cocoa, the peels and all that. Everything should be researched and we package and make production out of it. If you do not do that, then we continue to rely on others. Then this is a very personal thing. We have to add up. We have to. So I compare the economy of Ghana to that of a football match, where the midfield is broken. The midfield is broken. So we have the elementary sources, the primary sources that the farmers have produced, and then when it comes to the middle, where we have to pack it, bag it, and store it, we do not have it. And then we overpass the middle and then come to the consumer, eat it whether you like it or not, and then it perishes and there's no productivity in that thing. Let's do this as a conscious effort of a country. And then, because it should not be said that there's a war in Ukraine. The things that Ukrainians consume is very different from our mankani, cassava, plantain, and all other things that we consume here.
Right.
Let's not even tie up with it. It's a disgrace. It's not fair to Ghanaians. Let's add value. Let's research. Add so many things. People do not even know that we eat cassava leaves. When you go to Kenya and all that, it's a delicacy.
Liberia.
Yes, we have to research and add it to our consumption. And then we'll have abundance for all of us.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph Obeng, the president of GUTA, the Ghana Union of Traders Association. I'll give you a minute, Mark Bedu, to just re-echo some of the things you've said. What should the way forward be?
I agree with Dr. Obin to a large extent that we need to change the structure of the economy. Otherwise, we'll come back to discuss these issues. But my last point is that looking at the way things are going, we should brace ourselves up for a higher increase in prices. And consumers...
We should brace ourselves for
an increase in prices.
An increase in prices,
yes,
of commodities?
Of commodities.
Whether imported or locally produced?
Exactly, because inflation is still with us. And businesses, we are not Father Christmas. We have to... In fact, if you still want to keep people in business, if you still want to have our businesses and you still want to contribute to tax, we should find a way to sustain business. And the only way out now is to ensure that if for not even a larger margin, there should be some increase in prices that we should expect in the next few months.
Thank you for joining us, Mark. Mark says the businesses are not Father Christmas. And so, obviously, if they are to stay afloat, they'll be passing on the cost to you, the consumer. Mark Bedu Abwaje is Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce. This has been our discussion on the inflationary rate. But we have a lot more coming your way as we get into other pertinent conversations. We'll be talking about the Ghana Water Company Limited and how 50% of its water is consumed, yet not paid for. Do stay. Let's talk now about water. Yes, the Ghana Water Company Limited. You see their logo right behind me. And it's all because they are collaborating now with national security to ensure that water thieves, in quote, are dealt with. According to the Ghana Water Company Limited, about 50% of the water it produces is used without payment. So what are the latest dynamics? What does the Ghana Water Company Limited have, does it have to say on the back of this? We know that utility providers are calling for more. The Electricity Company of Ghana has called for about 100% increment in tariffs. The Ghana Water Company Limited as well. But what does this mean to its operations and what is the way forward? Well, we'll be joined shortly by Stanley Marte, who speaks for the Ghana Water Company Limited. We actually have him, but we also have Patrick Apoya, Executive Secretary, Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation, that is CONIWAS. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. You will have to unmute, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right. I'll start with you, Mr. Marte. It's been a while. I mean, we've been talking about these developments, but no one knew it was this stark, 50%. On the back of that event yesterday. How did you come by this figure, though?
Okay, so for our non-revenue water, as of 2017, it was 55%. We have a way of calculating because we measure the volumes of water produced from our treatment plants, the volumes of water that we pump into the system, and then we juxtapose that with consumption of our billing. So the difference will give us unaccounted for water or non-revenue water. So this calculation is quite accurate as at 2017. And it's been one of the challenges for global utilities. I mean, non-revenue water is a serious challenge for all utilities, actually. So for us in Ghana, we have taken it very seriously. And we are working a serious on non-revenue water because it is costing us a lot. Now, non-revenue water is categorized into two or has two sides to it. We have physical losses and we have commercial losses. And the physical losses are the leakages and bursts that we see. And then the commercial losses are the losses where people consume the water and not pay or use clandestine means to get water through our pipelines and what we call
So we're still getting some details from Stanley Mate, PRO of the Ghana Water Company Limited. But the point to be made is that some 50% of the water produced by the Ghana Water Company Limited is unaccounted for in terms of revenue. In other words, people steal that water either by not paying for the services they consume or by employing illegal routes to tap into the Ghana Water Company Limited's sources to get water but evade payment. And that is the matter in question now. That is what the Ghana Water Company Limited has been speaking about and we're addressing. Stanley Mate, you were making a point. We lost you. Just rehash that point you were making. Hello, Mr. Mate, please unmute.
Am I on now?
You're on now. I can hear you.
Yeah. So since 2017, we have done a lot of investment so that we could reduce the non-revenue water. We have actually set up a department to handle non-revenue water. We have resourced them. Now we are using digital smart meters, in all our installations and then in the homes of our customers, so that we are able to get accurate readings, and then we'll be able to reduce our non-revenue water, because the mechanical meters, we have also realized that doesn't read accurately. We also have very old meters in the system that may not also be reading accurately. So our policy now is to go digital, which we are sure of its accurate readings. And so we are changing, or we have a policy now to change all our meters into digital smart meters so that we can calculate effectively. Now, as at 2021, we've been able to reduce non-revenue water from 55% to 46%. As I speak today, as of last month, our calculation amounted to 42%. So we know we are still going down, and we have a target of 34% by 2025. And I am sure that with the investments being made...
What was the target again, just to clarify? Did you say 34% by 2025?
4% by 2025. And I'm saying again that we just want to be moderate with setting our targets. But with the way things are going, we are very sure that even by 2025, we will do better than the 35% that we have set for ourselves. So we are really working seriously at it. Now, globally, the allowable losses for all utilities is between 20 and 25%. And as a utility where we have a vision to become a world-class utility or world-class leader, we are poised and working as seriously at attaining that target of even doing better. And if all Ghanaians will support the Ghana Water Company Limited, we should be able to attain that feat. Because one major challenge that we have is illegal connections. And so if we are able to curb that, even at 80%, we should be able to hit that target in no time. So we are working really seriously at that.
Let's look at your revenue figures, and let's also look at how this would impact even your calls, for example, like you have put forward now for higher utility tariffs. Let's take a quick look at that. So per what we gather from your event recently, in terms of water sales, a total volume of 172.7 million meters cube was sold in the year 2021, 22.8% above the volume of water sold in 2017. That is 140.6 million meters cube. But in terms of billing, the total water revenue for 2017 was 887.1 billion, increasing to 1.2 billion in 2021. And in terms of revenue collection, 2017 and 2021 raking in 669.5 million and 902.2 million respectively. Now, while there have been some increments, you're still bleeding as far as the numbers involving people who are not paying for water is concerned. My question is, so if these numbers are shot down, like your 2025 projection of 35%, would that mean that we would need to have fewer utility tariff increments?
Yes, we made that also part of the proposal. And so, now the tariffs are supposed to be for a 5-year period. And then we are going to have a similar calculation like the automatic adjustment formula every quarter. And now they've changed the name. And so, but it's going to be very similar to that of the automatic adjustment formula. So that every quarter, the factors used will be looked at, will be reviewed, and if it has to go up, it will go up. If it has to come down, it will come down. But we had made it part of our proposal that all things being equal, if we think should go the way we expect, then tariffs should be going down and in the future and not going up. But if we still continue the way we are, then it means it will still be going up. For instance, we've never had a cost-reflective tariff. So we are praying that we get a cost-reflective tariff so that we'll be able to do the investments that we have envisaged for ourselves. And then we can reduce cost of production and everything. We also have to look at the pollution of our river bodies, our sources. The sources is also another major challenge because we now use more chemicals, and the cost of chemicals on the world market is always going. The CD is dancing against the dollar. And so all these things affect us because all the
Okay, so we appear to be losing Stanley Mate once more. If we don't get him shortly, we'll move on to Patrick Apoya. I think the point has been made on that question I posed. But let me bring in Mr. Apoya, who is a wash specialist with Coniwas. For you, when you look at some of these proposals by the Ghana Water Company Limited, especially in terms of utility tariffs and some of the measures, the task force that is being implemented, how do you react?
Well, to start with, let me just correct that I'm no longer the executive secretary of Coniwas. I'm now a member of Coniwas. Just a correction for the public.
Right.
First, we will try to congratulate Ghana Water Company, the team, for a good work done. And if I just take a step backwards, you remember in 2000, there was a huge hullabaloo about privatization and anti-privatization campaigns. And one of the reasons that was being pushed was the inefficiencies of Ghana Water Company Limited. Non-revenue water was 55%, around 57% around 2000. By 2005, it came to 55%. And that was the time that Aqua Vitens Rand came to participate or took over the management of Ghana Water Company Limited. Now, one of the key performance indicators for Aqua Vitens Rand was to move it down from 55% to 45% within 5 years. But unfortunately, with all the best intentions and all the effort of the international company, which was a joint venture between a company in South Africa and the Netherlands, they could only move it from 55% to 52.3%. That was just a marginal drop in 5 years. So for the MD and his team to consciously beat it down from 55%, it went back again to 55% in 2017, as Stanley said, and it is now below 49% currently, as he's saying, maybe 42% if it turns out to be the case. That is no mean achievement.
I think he mentioned something around 44%.
Around 44%. That's no mean achievement at all. If you compare what an international company achieved in 5 years and what they are achieving also in 5 years. It is the first time that we are seeing like good intentions or a really determined move by the company to deal with this problem. And technology is one, but there's also a human factor that technology cannot address. And those factors are related to some of the company-related inefficiencies that they need to tackle. And those ones, it's more about pollution. There's nothing a manager can do to stop the problem completely if staff themselves are colluding with customers to entrench the problem. Now, if you look at the way they bill, it would have been good for Ghana Water Company would have liked to just bill what they can recover for their costs, regardless of whatever they're able to bill. But Public Utilities Regulatory Commission has a formula of ensuring that the company doesn't pass its inefficiencies to consumers. So if you produce water and half of that water you lose revenue on it, just imagine the amount of money you are calling that per year. This is what they generate. The money you are calling, which is 900 and something million, is the same money they are losing through the non-revenue water that they were not getting, even more when it was 55%. So if you had all that money, maybe the bills you're receiving now would have been all right. But unfortunately, because of that volume you're losing, you are always short of money, and they will probably want to bill customers to make it up. So our reaction is the company is on a good trajectory. They are doing very good. If they can keep on the interventions and the focus, then the kind of increment they are looking for, we agree that it is not cost recovery. But remember, in water, we are balancing social needs with the economic needs. Ghana Water Company currently is not a category 4 subvented organization. It's still a category 3 subvented organization, which means that they are still receiving government subsidies for some of their core operations. So it is not, they have not yet weaned themselves off the government budget yet. So it is also not 100% okay that immediately they will just move strictly to a 100% cost recovery formula for calculating tariffs. We are not saying they should operate at a loss, but there has to be a balance at which level they will be making 100% recovery for their inputs, some profit that can attract international investors to join the company without putting unnecessary burden on the consumer. And that
on that very tangent, Patrick Apoya, do you feel it is realistic what the Ghana Water Company Limited has been calling for in terms of tariff increments in recent times?
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic to consumers. It's realistic to Ghana Water Company Limited, because, as I mentioned earlier on, the thing that PURC is looking at is to ensure that the company doesn't pass inefficiencies to the consumer. But right now, there's an inefficiency from our economic managers, those who are managing our economy, having allowed the city to fall so much. It is just simply not possible to say, pass that inefficiency to, even though it is not a problem of the company. The fact that their importing costs are rising, it's not their fault. It's a result of the economy. And now to say that the consumer should come and bear that again, we don't think that is appropriate. They should find better ways of seeing how to source most of the items locally. The volumes of things they consume, if we could encourage local production of some of them. At least some of those chemicals, they are more sophisticated than the pharmaceuticals that are produced in Ghana, that we can produce some of them in country. I think that's why the company should be looking at moving forward. I'm not saying the company itself should produce, but it is if you put in a lot of effort to attract private producers into some of those inputs, like the chemicals that they use to treat their water, in 2-3 years, it's possible to attract such investments. And that will be one way they can keep their prices low, so long as they are sourcing half of their inputs locally instead of importing. Right. Just imagine the volumes that they use to export and to import. It is not realistic to have customers bear that burden if the city is not stable.
Okay, let me bring in Stanley to quickly react to some of what you've been saying. If you have a quick reaction, maybe you can do that in some 30 seconds, and then I'd have you answer some other questions. Mr. Marty.
So Patrick spoke about...
oh, yes, and he says it's not realistic what you're calling for. You can react to some of those very quickly.
So I want to start from the chemical issue. That yes, we have also looked at getting producers of these chemicals from Ghana. But so far, if you look at the chemicals that we use, they can't be produced in Ghana. And we welcome any organization that is ready to supply us with chemicals from Ghana. Sometimes we face serious challenges importing them. For instance, we use chlorine gas. Even shipping chlorine gas from other countries to this place, it's a serious challenge. We don't have, the ships sometimes refuse to transport them to Ghana. And
why is that? Why is that? Having had the Ghana Water Company Limited for donkey years, decades, why haven't we implemented mechanisms to ensure the free flow of chlorine gas because it's something that you use. You use it all the time.
We don't own vessels, okay? And I'm wondering whether there's the Ghanaians who own vessels. Okay, so if foreign vessels say they are not interested in carrying chlorine gas because it's very dangerous, what else can you do? There are others who want to do it, but then they want to do it within a certain policy or a certain program, and it becomes very difficult for us to import them in. Now we use chlorine powder. Can chlorine powder also be produced in Ghana? We use hypochlorite, we use alum. If we can get institutions in Ghana who can produce the chemical, it becomes very easy for us. But
let me ask you this interesting question, Mr. Marty. You are using some of your water, even you have G water, for example. You saw an outlet in the business community, and you've moved from production levels of about 3,000 per day to 15,000. How about considering, instead of letting everything be maybe government should help us or private enterprise should help us, how about the Ghana Water Company Limited? Can you source some of your revenue to do this, to shore up your own production? Is that possible?
With everything that we discussed yesterday, with all the successes that we chalked over the years, 90% is from internally generated revenue. It's the little revenues that we collect that we be able to manage them well and invest them back into the system for us to achieve what we have achieved and what we're proud of yesterday. Okay, so we are doing a lot, and it's all from the little monies that we collect. And we are hustling because we don't have cost-reflective tariffs. Okay, so for instance, investment into...
So essentially, because we don't have so much time, so essentially you disagree with Mr. Apoya, who says you're not being realistic in terms of the percentage increments that you're asking for. You disagree with him?
I disagree with him because PLC gave us a template to populate and to send. I mean, after populating the template, with the formula, the results comes out by itself. And they gave us 3 scenarios, and that was exactly what we did. Okay, and our reports go to PLC on monthly basis. And so we have used their audited reports. So it's not like we have cooked figures to come out with the proposals that we did. They are realistic and audited figures. And that is, and populating the template and coming out with using the formula, that is what comes out.
All right, let's wrap the conversation on this note, and I'll give Mr. Apoya the final bite. But for you, your final bite, Stanley Marty, in terms of the challenges you're facing, it's not just water theft by ordinary Ghanaians, whether they are businesses or, individuals. There are other factors. You talk about illegal mining activities, sand winning and pollution of water bodies. That is one which also adds up to the turbidity levels, which also compounds your treatment of the water. You speak about frequent power outages leading to a disruption in water supply. And essentially, you also talk about people building on pipelines and encroachment on utility reservations by some communities. Taking out the water theft component, all of these other factors also add to the problems you face. How are you addressing those angles?
Okay, so we are working with the district assemblies so that all encroached properties on our pipelines will be cleared. That is one. With power outages, we are same. We're working with ECG and NETCO and Gridco to see how best we can have dedicated lines to our major treatment plants, so that at least we're going to have a reduction in the frequency of the power outages. Now, when it comes to chemicals and this importation and all that, we have very little control, especially because of the dollar and then the prices on the world market. So whatever is within our control, we are working seriously at it. And then what is beyond our control, we are also working with the powers that be, so that we see how best that can be managed.
Mr. Apoya, I'll give you the last bite in some 30 seconds. What are your final thoughts?
Yes, my final thoughts will be, yes, we are not challenging the formula that they use. We know they use a tanker formula, but we are saying whatever that formula has produced, it will be too huge a burden on poor people. And if they will even go ahead with that, then they need to address the problem of compound houses sharing 1 meter, which we have flagged many years over and over again, and they seem not to be interested in doing something about it. The social tariff that they put on the first bracket for consumers, because 10 households may share a meter. Within 1 week, that is gone. And they now keep moving to higher bands of billing. And at the end of the day, the poor people who are staying in compound houses would even pay more than people who are staying alone in bungalows. And it is very regressive. So they need to do something about making sure that all households are getting their own meters instead of lumping 10 people together into a meter in compound houses. If they can do that, then the effect will be minimal. I think we will have a win-win for the company and also for consumers.
Gentlemen,
I think that lies with PULC. For us, we have presented a proposal as requested of us. Now the final say lies with the PULC. So we're looking up to them. We don't have control over that as well. So we are looking up to them, and as our regulators, whatever they bring out, we'll manage it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Patrick Apoya is a wash specialist. He is a member of CONIWAS. We also have Stanley Mate, who is Director of Communications with the Ghana Water Company Limited. We're grateful that you took the time to join us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Right before we take our break, Jose, that's hello. How about treating your family to a summer holiday in South Africa? Come journey to South Africa for a good time in our beautiful country. Get to know the locals and our languages. And if you're looking to let your hair down, relax, or you're just in the mood for some fun, family-friendly adventures, South Africa has got everything you need. This summer, Wazanila, come this side and experience a holiday worth talking about. But it's here again. Happy moment is here. Let's storm World Cup Qatar 2022 with Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks, and Awake Drinking Water from Casapreco Company Limited. All you have to do, buy your favorite Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drink, Awake Drinking Water, and text the 4-digit unique number on the neck of the bottle to short code *780#. Choose option 2 and follow the prompts on all networks for free. You could be one of the lucky winners to this year's World Cup in the monthly draw. But apart from that, you can also win TVs, fridges, microwave ovens, mobile phones, home theaters, free drinks, and more instantly. So don't waste any time. Grab a bottle of Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks, and Awake Drinking Water, and let's storm Qatar this World Cup. This promotion is on the NLA Caritas platform. This advert is FDA approved. Remember, terms and conditions do apply. Now, after the break, when we return, we'd spend some time with Chigozie Obioma. He is the James E. Ryan Associate Professor of English and Creative Writing at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. His 2 novels, The Fisherman, published in 2015, and An Orchestra of Minorities in 2019, were shortlisted for the Booker Prize. His novels have been translated into more than 29 languages. He has an event in Ghana later today at ISSA at the University of Ghana. We'll bring you more details as he joins us for breakfast. Do stay. Well, I'm excited this morning, especially at this juncture, being an author myself, having to interact with another author who is in the country and who is having some sessions, in fact, today at ISSA of the University of Ghana. I'm pleased to give you Chigozie Obioma, author of The Fisherman and An Orchestra of Minorities. Chigozie, a very good morning to you.
It's such a pleasure to be here, to be in Ghana and to be told Akwaba every time. It's wonderful.
I see. Is this your first time?
Yes, it's my first time, yeah.
You know something I noticed prepping for this interview? You were born in a state and the particular place where I spent a little bit of my childhood, Akure in Ondo State.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
I'm telling you. So when I saw it, I felt, look at us. Yeah. We probably lived there, looking at your age, around the same period.
Yeah, The Fisherman was set wholly in Akure.
So tell us about, even before we delve into other aspects, what got you into writing?
So I was a little boy who wanted to be Maradona. So I grew up.
You wanted to be Maradona?
Yes, I grew up in the 90s and I wanted to play soccer.
Right.
But it was that serendipitously took me into writing. So I would play trouncy and go to these small fields that were filled with mosquitoes and play football. And then, one time I got very sick.
and then I ended up at the hospital. I was admitted. And then during that bout of illnesses, my parents would tell me a story, especially my dad. And during one of those times, the landscape of my imagination opened in a weird way. And I would start living in my head for a long time. And all I wanted to do was hear stories. And one day when I was probably like 9 or so, and I was able to read, and he told me, he said, do you know that you could actually read those things in a book and then tell them? And that was how I became a writer. From then on, I began to read voraciously and then started to create my own stories.
How has your, career as a lecturer, how has that impacted this as well? Because apart from your background and these incidents you paint, I'm sure your work itself, in English and teaching has also had an impact. What would you say the impact has been?
Yeah, so, I teach, there's the assumption that because I've published these novels, then I know how to teach. I figured it out. So what I've learned from teaching young writers and mentoring them in general is that you learn a lot yourself, and because you're constantly being exposed to embryonic work in process, your own understanding of how fiction works, of what actually is good, gets reinforced all the time. So that, the more you're exposed to these things, you start saying in your head, okay, I myself have to avoid that thing, this thing that I'm correcting in these works. So it does help me, and I'm happy. Even Manasseh Awuni was in one of the workshops that I did. That's how I got to know him. It gets you to meet a lot of people, and tomorrow when he becomes a great novelist as well, I can say, that was one of my people.
Reading some details of your work, I've not read the entirety of the books, the 2 books you've published, the Fisherman and An Orchestra of Minorities. But you sort of give me, though it's not fantastic realism, you sort of remind me of Benjamin Okri and a bit of Benjamin Kwachi. I don't know whether you've read either of them. But with your works in 2015, The Fisherman, give us a bit of a summary of what that story is about. I'm sure those watching us will be thinking, what is his style? What's his genre? What would you say is your genre, even before you tell us that?
So honestly, I have coined the word mystical realism.
Mystical realism. I think that's why you remind me of Benjamin Okri. Right.
Yeah. So in they call, critics have said that these are magical realism. But in magical realism, you can create anything. Like, for instance, Garcia Marquez, you can have somebody stabbed and the blood out of the person's bowels can flood an entire city. Which is an impossibility.
Is
an impossibility. But in mystical realism, I think I'm trying to mine the African worldview. The Igbo, for instance, believe that there's no distinction between the world of the living and the dead. We interact and move out of those spaces.
It's a fluid continuum.
It's very fluid. So in that sense, you could have the story of the fisherman, which is about a madman who has prophetic instincts, who sees the future and makes a prediction that comes true. But then the question is, does it come true because of the madman's prophecy? Or did these boys bring it to a kind of realization? So that way, the course of nature is not interrupted in the way in which magical realism interrupts nature or fantasy.
Right.
So, because those boys live in a natural way, they just happen, their actions happen to align with the contents of the prophecy. So that is what I'm trying to do.
It's interesting, very interesting, these dynamics that are playing out. So that is The Fisherman. Let's talk a bit about An Orchestra of Minorities. This was published in 2019,
2019,
right?
Yes.
Right.
So this is a novel that is told by a Chi. So if you have noticed, I don't know if your audience knows this, but most names from the eastern region of Nigeria begin with the Chi. Chigozie, Chinoa, Chinonso. So the reason is because...
so it means even Chimamanda...
Yes. So it was believed that every individual has this genuine divinity in them.
Right.
That
the Chi or the Kai.
Chi, yeah,
right.
the Chi. So that is a spirit that I've become very interested in since I was born, because anything that happened to me, if I took ill as a child, my mother would say, well, it's because of his interaction with his chi that this has happened to him.
There's something going on between you and your chi.
And your chi. So madness is seen as a result of discordance with one's chi. So this story is a testimonial story told by a chi, a spirit of this guy who gives all he has for the woman he loves. He sacrifices everything and loses everything at the end of the day. So, I mean, not to give away anything, because I want everybody in Ghana to go and buy the book, you know. And so it's a story of self-sacrifice. It's an odyssey as well.
It's an odyssey as well.
An odyssey.
And a lot of us who are going to be there this evening will also get further insights, I want to believe, into these works and what they can expect, and maybe any future works. But we'll be getting into that. Who are your inspirations? Who are your mentors coming into this? Are you following in the footsteps of Professor Chinua Achebe of blessed memory? You know, Chimamanda, was basically his protege. Is it Wale Soyinka? Who is it that you emulate? And maybe even from Ghana as well, if you have any people.
Oh, absolutely. So growing up, I read a lot of, I was exposed to definitive works of African literature. And I have to say that The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born was definitely...
I had a feeling you would go there.
No, I'm telling you. It's true. I read that book a number of times. I'm sure he's dead now. Ama. Is he? No?
I have to confirm that.
I haven't said anything.
I'd have to confirm that. You know, one thing I like about his book?
Yeah.
The fact that, he spells beautiful with a Y.
Yes.
You notice it? That was one thing that hit me, that actually got me to read that
very
book.
Much, yeah. So those were formative, but also because I began reading what was on my dad's library, I read a lot of Greek tragedy. Classical European work. Shakespeare was a dominant force in my upbringing, and that is why my works tend to be tragic in their inclination. I mean, there's a lot of joy
now I get
in them, but it's I think shaped and informed in
tragic comedy and all of that.
Subterranean way by those elements.
Anyway, I hear he is still alive.
Oh no! I pray that you continue to
no, but not your. I mean, looking at when we were reading, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. You would think that, but he's still.
Some of us weren't even born by then.
Anyway, so having spoken about your influences, for example, and looking at the number of translations, your work has been translated into over 25 languages and all of that. How do you handle all of that? Because you're globally known, and we're talking about the Booker Prize, you've been shortlisted, we're talking about other prizes that you've won, international prizes. How does that make you feel?
Well, you have to be grounded. You have to always, I say to people, I'm just starting. I'm 36 this year, and I'm grateful for all of these things, but I have, I want to do more. I want to be able to tell. So I have hopefully a novel that will come out next year, which chronicles the events of the Biafran War. So I want to be able to fill gaps that are in African literature. Like, an Orchestra of Minorities was born out of the desire to write a cosmological novel, because I read Paradise Lost by John Milton. And I'm like, okay, so this guy chronicles the fall of man, heaven and hell, this Judeo-Christian cosmology. And you have all these religions in Africa, and there's no decidedly cosmological novel. And then I did that. Now I want to write a major war novel.
War novel?
Not a wartime novel.
Okay.
Not one that is, but the men and women that were in the trenches. What does it mean to sit in a trench for 36 hours under, experiencing hunger, under constant shelling and all of that? So I like to say that I want to do the dirty work of African literature. Fill those gaps, that are still, there in one way or the other.
One question that I know a lot of people would have for you, just how much does it take to break through? Because I'm an author myself, and while I have a lot of manuscripts and all of that for fictional and other works, you would realize that breaking through in our terrain is immensely difficult, not to talk of even going beyond the shores of Africa and all of that. How difficult is it to break through, and what example would you say rising authors can emulate from you?
So what I would advise people to do is, it's difficult, especially if your work is set in Ghana, for instance. If you want to write about what is happening here, you want to document some of the, events in fiction, nobody is necessarily interested in that until you make them interested. People don't care about, they're more interested about stories set in America or Britain or Germany or whatever. But what you have to do is have an almost obsessive dedication to your craft. And then once you do that, you will find readers. And it's easier today. There's the internet, and you could also, I think what I did was, apply for MFA programs in the US, for instance, or workshops where you meet with established writers who can mentor you. So that is one of the ways to go. But you could also send your work to an agent. Let's say you've completed a novel, and look for my agent if you love my book. I probably have an acknowledgement at the back of the book. There's always an acknowledgement at the back of the book to people who have supported the writer, and then query those agents. Say, oh, my writing feels like that of so and so author. And therefore, sometimes they look at your work and then, before you know it, you are at the door of a publisher.
Was there an element of luck in all of this, do you think?
Definitely.
An element of luck.
I will tell you this. I had 2 novels before The Fisherman, which nobody even looked at. They would just send me a rejection. We don't want this. So why The Fisherman was the one book that people latched onto, I have no idea.
And after that, then once you're in the limelight, it's easier, because when you came through with An Orchestra of Minorities, that was also shortlisted for the Booker Prize.
Yeah, of course. There's a certain deference that people will now give you. Like, one thing I often say is that now, any book I write, you are guaranteed that all the major medias are going to look at it. They are going to cover it. I will be surprised. You'll get
critical reviews.
Yes,
and all of that.
If the New York Times does not review a book by me, because so it gets easier that way. But starting out, I did not know what to expect from anything.
Let's talk about 2 quick things. First of all, how you integrate your family sometimes and your background into your writing, and how, as a judge for the Booker Prize, you had to read 160 books in 6 months. How did you do that?
Yeah, so I like to say that for The Fisherman, it was a tribute to my brothers, to growing up in this family of 11 siblings. So we're
11.
Yes, and what was funny was that growing up, they used to laugh at us. So I was ashamed of my siblings of just how many we were, until I left for university. I left them for the first time. And it dawned on me, it was like an epiphany. All the freshmen were like, oh, my friend here, my friend in Lagos, my friend in there. And I did not have a friend. And I hadn't considered that it was even needful, because there were so many people that we could play soccer, football together. I just didn't see that I needed a friend. So my family means a lot. So I began to think, okay, so these guys mattered so much to me, but I didn't know it while living with them. And so I wrote that novel. About the Booker Prize last year, my goodness, it was a book a day. So imagine that you were finishing a book a day, and some of them were as big as this, sometimes 500-page novels. So it was a challenge, but I had to do it because it's a very prestigious prize. So I saw it more as a service to the community, because nobody would be reading my work. I wouldn't be where I was today if my work was not selected by the Booker Prize. That completely changed my life. The next day after the shortlist, more than 20 publishers from around the world wanted to publish The Fisherman.
Wow.
I'm telling you, like the week after, we sold 20 rights.
It tells you what impact these have. So just to wrap up the conversation, maybe two critical points I want us to quickly take a look at. Will be at the tail end, I want you to give us what people can expect later this evening when they come through ISA at the University of Ghana. But before that, I just want to get your thoughts on Nigeria, its impact on writing on the African continent, and how you feel others, though we've spoken about young people, how can other writers on the African continent break through? What are some of the tips that you feel they should know?
So one of the things is I think that there will be a temptation not to write stories set in Africa because they don't sell well. I have to tell you that Unoccupied Minorities did not make that much money in the US. I mean, it did very well critically. But I think that we should be resilient in that. But also be humble. You could get carried away. You asked me earlier, what do you do with all of this? So you could decide that, okay, well, I'm somebody now. But then you don't get back in the weeds because in the trenches of the work, in that sweating is where you produce this reasonable stuff. So ground yourself in some humility and make friends. Get to know people. Like you mentioned, Adichie being a protege of
Chinua
Achebe, yes. So if Achebe's blob on half of a yellow sun changed that woman's career in major ways. So get connected to those who are out there who are ahead of you, and that helps a lot.
I'm going to get connected.
Definitely. One of the people who helped me in Canada, for instance, is a Canadian writer called S.C. Edugan. Edujan, yes. Her dad was from Ghana. And she promoted The Fisherman. She loved the film. I didn't know her. She would go on TV, CBC, and speak about this book. And she brought me.
So definitely, we should look forward to those peers of ours who are ahead. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Just to wrap the conversation, we have to go. But what can those who are going to share this afternoon with you, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., expect?
3 p.m. by the way.
To 3 p.m. It's been extended.
3 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Right.
So I'll be talking about these things. I will tell you how to break into publishing. And I will talk about my work, and I will take questions from you. So if you have questions, come and give it to us.
Chigozie Obioma, shortlisted twice for the Booker Prize, The Fisherman, and an orchestra of minorities. Join him at the ISA Conference Hall today at the University of Ghana. It's been a pleasure, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Keep rising.
Thank you. You too.
And that is how we draw the curtains on the AM show for another beautiful morning. But don't you forget, up next, JoyNews Desk with Samuel Kojo Brace. Stay and get informed.